Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a great treat for you. Actually, we have two. We have Jose and Jesus again. You guys can pick, take your pick. And Jesus says you got to bob for him, kind of like you're bobbing for apples. This time you're bobbing for something else. So, welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Press the post notification bell. You know, all the YouTube things. Make sure you give these two a lot of views and a lot of comments because these two, once they talk tech, they never stop. But I'd like to introduce our two lovely guests. One has two ponytails. The other one looks normal. You get to pick. Ladies and gentlemen, the first guest we'll pick the MacBook is Jesus Almeda. And then we got the gardener-in-chief, our Windows guru. It's Jose Flores. What's up, gentlemen?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Well, it's going good. It's going good. We got a lot to talk about. This might just have to be a multi-episode podcast because there is so much to delve into. We're going to be talking Apple because, Tim Cook has a way of making that company work, doesn't it? Or doesn't he? We're going to be talking Mac OS, and we're going to be talking about the ARM processors. We're going to talk about iPad OS and its processor and its stand in the market. We're going to be talking about iPhones and the cameras and the processors and Androids and all the things you guys want to talk about and all the things people want to hear about. So I figured we are going to start simple. We're going to let the Mac headline everything, so it'll be last because it's the most... I guess I could say advanced, maybe a lot of to talk about there. Let's go ahead and start off simple with the iPhone. So the iPhone is coming out with the iPhone 14. 14 mini might not be the mini anymore. It might be, according to leaks from 9 to 5, Mark Gurman, Minchi Kuo, and all kinds of other people and all the YouTubers, it might be the iPhone 14 Max. You can believe it.
Or then 14 plus, whatever
or 14
you may.
Plus.
Oh. Yes, that's another name that I hear is going around, that 14 Max or 14 Plus. A lot of people are saying that it's more probable that it's going to be 14 Plus because it's not really a Max. They're just still offering you the same thing as the regular 14 will. So I guess if they'd have a Max on it, I guess it's for Max battery, I guess. So that's the only reason they would add it. But a lot of people are saying it's going to be most likely it's going to be Plus.
Okay. Our guru there. Yes. Okay. Then it'll go 14 Pro and then 14 Pro Max. I'm moving my mic because headphones got stuck. So the iPhone, they're playing around with names, but giving you very little features to look forward to in my book, in my opinion. The iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max at least is set to possibly have a 48 megapixel main sensor camera. The other three cameras, the telephoto, photo wide, and ultra wide, will only have your 12 megapixels. But the main camera on the front and your selfie camera will be 48 megapixels. Now, there are some features that it might have. They're talking about possibly getting rid of the notch. They're possibly talking about the Pros and Pro Max models at least having, instead of stainless steel edges, titanium edges, which I would really like. There's no reverse charging. Someone asked me that on Twitter the other day, and I said I haven't seen that. Androids have that, and it's really nice. Don't expect iPhone to have that. So before
it would actually be, I'm sorry.
So before we get into it, into the iOS software update. Jesus, let me start with you. Are there features you're looking forward to, or is this another S year for iPhones where, oh my God, it's just a camera and maybe a couple changes to the design language?
For the actual iPhone itself, I'm really looking forward to the 14 Plus or Max, as it will be called, whichever one they give us. Because of the battery, I really don't need the extra pro features. I don't really care about the notch. I think that shit's like whatever to me. And I think a lot of people that are used to iPhones anyways, whether they could see or not, I have gotten used to the fucking notch. It doesn't even bother them. I have asked multiple people, and they're like, no, it doesn't even bother me. I don't even notice it anymore. So it's like a lot of people that are making a big deal out of it is just people that come from Androids and have those hole punch screens on them.
Mhm.
And then they see this big ass notch and they're like, oh, I don't like that. How does iPhone still have this? It's like, but your average consumer of iPhones or any Apple device really does not care whether it has a notch or not. So that's my input on it.
And are there? I mean, even if it gets a smaller notch or they completely take it off, I do not think they're going to completely take it off. They might just make it smaller around the borders, a little smaller around where the receiver is. But are there any features you either are hoping they might have or that you heard of it having?
Well, not anything that I could say, oh my God, this is something that I would want on my phone. Actually, I'm kind of skipping this year's phone because I guess the only exciting thing is just the bigger 14, right? It's not really anything else that is exciting to me. Plus, it's rumored to have this year's chip instead of the A16 chip that is coming up. So, of course, it doesn't make any difference. The phone is still going to be incredibly fast. It's still going to be fine. It's just there's nothing really exciting for me. Unfortunately, yeah, you're right. It's not going to have any reverse charging. I really do think that is very unfortunate because that would be pretty bitching to have reverse charging to just place your AirPod on top of your iPhone and just charge them, or somebody needs some battery and they have wireless charging on their phone. You can just place it on your phone and just kind of give them a little bit of power. So unfortunately, I don't see Apple doing that anytime soon, but I do think that would be a pretty nice feature to have.
And of course, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I did forget to mention they are rumored to increase the sizes of the entire lineup, not just the pros. Apparently, I did not write down the figures. I'm sorry, I just didn't write down the numbers. I was eating nachos and I didn't friggin' feel like it. So they're increasing the sizes of the phones. They're already very big. They're already actually kind of heavy. Does it make Jose? Does it make a difference that they're? I mean, it does it make sense to increase the size? I mean, look at the 13 Pro Max. That sucker's huge.
The rumor I recently heard is that they're also increasing the battery size on most of them, except maybe the Pro Max. That one might actually be shrinking. Um, so, I mean, it would make sense to make it bigger, I guess. I don't know. I feel like it's right now the size is good enough. I don't really think anybody
Yeah.
needs a bigger phone. Um, because as I said, they're big enough right now, and you increase the battery size, you make them bigger, they're gonna, get heavier, of course.
And of course, if you put titanium edges, which is heavier than stainless steel, pretty much they're gonna get bigger. Is there any feature you're looking forward to, or the ones that I listed? Is it worth switching?
From what I heard, the base models aren't worth switching, like the 14 and the 14 whatever they decide to call it, since they'll have the same chips and basically the same hardware as the previous phones. So what it sounds like is they're basically the 13s with a new name. The pros might be worth an upgrade if you're, I guess, looking forward to that camera, because that's the only big upgrade that they're getting. However, I did hear that even though it's going to be a 48 megapixel sensor, they're going to bunch them together, so it's really going to be the file size of a 12 megapixel picture. So I'm not sure how much better they would actually look. I mean, they would have more detail because they're more pixels. But at the same time, I don't know how much, like, how noticeable that would be,
Oh, sure.
because it's basically a 12 megapixel camera photo, even though it has that many more pixels in it.
I think at the end of the day, I think it would have to be up to AI to see how it basically fucks
Yeah.
around with the picture. I do have a question for you guys though.
Okay.
Talking about big phones and
We like
so
big things.
and tight things too.
Mm.
But would you guys be okay having a bulky phone if it had a long lasting battery? Like let's say they give you a phone. This phone is gonna last you a week worth of battery, but it was bulky as hell. It was really bulky, but it didn't really have the best camera, and the software was okay. Nothing like iOS, but it was all right. It was still usable, but the battery was amazing. Would you guys sacrifice that for the battery, or would you guys rather have a smaller battery but have the luxury of having a better software and maybe a better camera? Does that really matter to you guys?
I guess for me, it's more like a balance of things, you know. Like if you buy a new phone, you want it to have like, you know, the most up to date things, you know, whether that's, you know, a new camera, new processor, whatever. But at the same time, I feel like Apple has like fallen in love with like their 10-hour battery life, that it doesn't really seem like they're willing to go higher, at least not in the past couple years, because everything is like a 10-hour battery life when
Yeah,
they could
yeah,
you know, they couldn't put a bigger battery, you know, and say it's a 12 battery life phone, but for some reason they'll just put more. If they put a bigger battery, they'll put more energy heavy hardware, I guess. Like when they switched to 5G, you know, that would use more power, but instead of, you know, increasing the battery size, I think they actually decreased it from the 11 to the 12.
yeah. They did. They heavily decreased it, and they supposedly said
Absolutely.
that the software was going to take care of the power consumption of the phone,
It's
and
yeah.
well, that didn't work
I,
out as well as they thought it would, and
well,
that's
I
why they
mean that.
made the bigger batteries.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can expand on that and what you and Jose said. Well, what you and Jose said is, I mean, that is true. I remember when the 11 Pro, I loved the 11 Pro. 11 Pro was probably their last great phone, and I remember when I was hearing about the 12 coming out, I was excited for, hey, it's gonna be magnetic. I can limit my use of accessories. Now I don't have to go to the store and have a or go on a trip and have, okay, I have my charger here and this brick here and this charger here and that charger here. You're telling me I could buy a MagSafe Duo charger, and like my phone is on this charger here, that MagSafe you see on the back with a magnet, and just have those two things, and the MagSafe Duo will charge my watch and my phone, and I can take that on a trip and not have to worry. And you know, if my AirPods need a charge, I can take off the phone for like 15 minutes, put the AirPods on there as I'm getting ready to leave, and they're charged. Sounds like a hell of a good sale to me. That's, and of course the ProRes and the ProRes RAW and the Pro RAW and all of that. That for me as a YouTuber, that made sense to me. But when I heard, oh, we're gonna shrink the battery and let technology software increase the power, well, normally the way mechanics and engineering works, this isn't a laptop, okay? And usually, because of how much software you're adding and how much it's gonna render the CPU, you're gonna need a bigger battery. So I knew that was gonna be a failure right away. Oddly enough, what's funny is the 12 mini has the worst battery in all iPhones, even completely to prior, and yet it's their best seller. Actually, no, is it 12 mini or 12? One of the two was a great seller for Apple.
No,
For
it was the
me,
12. The 12
Yeah, it
mini
was the
yeah,
was such a
12.
bad failure that
that's
Yeah,
right.
that's why
and the
they're
reason,
basically
and the
canceling the mini product.
yeah, I mean the 12 mini had even a shittier battery than uh the SE, and that's pretty that's pretty amazing. The
Yeah, yeah, a
fact
cheaper
that
phone had the better battery. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty crazy that the SE had a better battery than a phone that literally just came out. It's just crazy, and the fact that they made the battery smaller, considering they even added 5G, is kind of like, damn, bro, why would you do that?
Well, that's true. And I'm pouring a soda. So it is true. And you're also thinking, okay, well, why am I going to buy your 12 mini with that bad of a battery. This is a topic that comes up with the watches too. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, my Samsung watch has a whole week. I don't have to charge it." Okay, but does it have blood oxygen monitoring and ECG and heart rate and workout, and can it read diabetic CPAC scanners, and does it count and does it and you go down the list. I agree the watch needs a better battery, but you have to realize that the watch market is kind of new in terms of the smartwatch market. Really 2013, 2014, 2015, especially when Apple Music was coming out, it was really just starting out. With an iPhone, I would look, and I know you were kind of hinting towards Android there. I would not like a bulkier phone if my phone is going to have less of a processor, less of a camera, less features. Everybody wants more features, and unfortunately, you're going to have to take less of a battery life uh than you want because of all those features. However, I think Apple is one of those companies. It has some of the best leading technology, and they underutilize it. But they could create and craft a battery that is that. Hey, let's increase it to 13 to 15 hours. Let's start there. Let's go higher. Look, they are in love with their 10-hour battery life. They need to. I would say go up to 12 or 13. My iPhone. What do I have? I have the I have the 12 Pro. This sucker lasts me a good 12, 13 hours. Which, if you think about it, that's how long you're out. That's how long you're at work. That's how long you're on the go. That's how you're on the train. You're on the subway. You're on the bus. That's how long. And now, people usually now you can get a tiny little wallet-sized battery charger, like a portable charger. And yes, now you have to carry a USB-C cable in your pocket now, and you have to. Okay, but there's accessories you can use now. So for me, I'd rather have all the features. That's what makes the iPhone so good. It's what made the iPhone amazing in the first place when it started collapsing the keyboard market. So, um, aside from, I think for me, I mean, the camera, yes, it is great to have a 48 megapixel camera. And like Jose said, look, I think the reason they're gonna make it the size of a 12 megapixel is because you don't want to fill up your phone too. It's gonna be a lot if everything is a 48 megapixel size, right? A file size. I am curious, as Jose said, I agree with him on. Is it gonna look like a 48 megapixel camera, or do you have to adjust something? If I'm on my Mac, do I have to throw it into DaVinci? Do I have to throw it into LumaFusion? Or do I have to throw it into Adobe or Final Cut and go, okay? The one thing that it is lacking. Well, actually, before we go there, who should upgrade to the 14 Pros at least? Jose, I'll start with you. Who in the market should be upgrading to a 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max?
Honestly, I think anybody who has anything less than an iPhone 12, because you do need that 5G now that companies are actually starting to.
They're building.
They're 5G. Building it. They're building out. They're finally building it out. So 5G is more important now than it was. What was it, like 2 years ago when the 12 came out? Because now you can actually find it in places, no matter what carrier you have, except maybe AT&T. I don't think their 5G is quite there yet. But yeah, so if you have anything that doesn't have 5G, maybe upgrade to the 14 Pro. If not, I would suggest maybe the 13. The regular ones if you don't want to go Pro. Because, they'll be cheaper since the 14s come out. And it's basically going to be around the same phone spec-wise. So I would say go for the 13 since it would be cheaper. Or go for the 14 Pro. I really don't see any reason to go for the regular 14.
You're saying if someone has the 12, go for the 13
if
Pro.
Someone has anything older than a 12, like an 11.
Gotcha. X. Yeah.
Because 12s do have 5G. The battery is pretty, it's not great, but it's still usable. So, maybe wait for the 15 if you have the 12, I would say.
Yeah, and I think if you have a terrible battery like the 12, then you might want to. And by the way, that my mom has the 13 Pro. I'm so jealous. And you know, that speaker, it's loud. If her door's closed and my door's open, you know, Jesus, you've seen my house. You've seen how far her room is from mine. I don't know if you remember. I
I've
can
never been
hear
to
what
her
she's
room,
playing
bro.
on her phone, and I can hear it most likely clearly, literally clearly. It is an incredible speaker, and the display, it is beautiful. That's where I think Apple made huge bank, was that display was. And I look at my mom's and I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. There's one thing though. Well, actually, Jesus, do you agree with Jose's assessment there of who should be going to the 14 Pro?
I mean, I think it's people that um are used to 120 refresh hertz displays. I think Apple calls it what, promotion or something like that.
Promotion. Yeah.
So I think people that are really used to that kind of stuff and that really want that, I think that would be a good option for them. But as far as 5G, yeah, I think you can go with any of the base models, with the 14 or 14, whatever they're going to call it, or you know, the camera. Of course, the 48 megapixel. They're probably only going to add it to the pro versions. I guess if the notch really matters to you heavily and you really are bothered by the notch, then yeah, I guess the pros would be the ones to get. But apart from that, um, I don't know. Like I don't see any other reason why to switch to the pros. But I'm sure once we see the event in September, we will see what actually is true and what's not true, and see if there's any more reasons to switch. So I'm really excited for that.
I'll tell you what. Well, I'm not excited, and I'll tell you why. The event is just gonna be, oh my god, the camera, and that's all people are gonna take away from it. Because and I don't blame them. The average consumer, that's what they're concerned about. People like us, we're concerned about, okay, well, does it have the notch? Does it have this? We're going down the list, going, okay, well, give me these few things. So these are most likely 99% not gonna have USB-C. Phil Schiller in 2012 said, "We're introducing Lightning. It's gonna be here for the next decade." However, under Tim Cook, who is the worst CEO, I think, of the tech market, um, well, aside from Google's for a lot of reasons, they're trying to push USB C and make it go to like another decade if they can. Jose, I'm gonna come to you here. This has been a giant debate. Europe is coming after Apple on the App Store. They're coming after them on their price hikes, which, God, if they could actually pass a law there, yeah, and right to repair, and they are coming after them on a lot. They also just made a ruling on USB C, right?
Yes.
So explain that if you can.
So, I think basically what it comes down to is they're gonna force every device to be USB C starting 2024, I believe. So, every device has to be USB C, whether it's a phone, laptop, headphones, that's those kind of devices. I do think they're going to give laptops a little longer, from what I heard, but basically they want all devices to kind of use one cable for everything, which should cut down on what supposedly Apple cares about, which is the environment, which is the reason they stopped giving their chargers out with their phones. Um,
That was
so
pretty funny.
yeah, so basically that's what it is. That's what the ruling is. So if you want to sell anything in Europe that is that kind of device, it would have to be USB C, and it could have another type of charger as well if you want. Like some of these laptops have like a separate charger where it's fast charging or whatever. But they have to have USB C. They have to be compliant with that.
Well, and USB C has faster data transfer speeds, and even just communication speeds and all of that. And I mean, a lot of people don't. I hate. I hate having a mixture of, well, this drive is USB. Well, this lightning, this thing trackpad is lightning. Well, this iPad is USB C. This is USB, and this is lightning, and it's like, I think Europe is trying to say, like, look, the entire industry is already moving. You already do this with your MacBooks and the headphones, the Beats headphones. They already do it anyway. So
So
why
do
are
the
you
so do the
and your iPad?
iPads. Yeah,
What was that?
I said so do the new iPads. They're all USB C.
Yep. From the
Yeah.
iPad Air 5 and on, I don't remember about the iPad Air 4. Does it? I don't know if the
No,
iPad Air.
I don't
I don't
think
think
it
so.
does.
I think it does. So the iPad Mini 5th gen. Is it 5th or 6th, Jose?
It's the fifth one.
It's the 5th. I'm like, oh, I don't know. The iPad Mini 5th, iPad Airs 4 and 5, and iPad Pros all use USB-C. We're going to go into the iPads later, but it makes no sense that my iMac is USB-C, has Thunderbolts, but then my trackpad, you have to connect using a USB to Lightning, not even USB-C to Lightning. And then the part that goes into the port on the trackpad is USB-C. It's Lightning. And then you go to my phone and, oh, look, Lightning. AirPods, Lightning. The Duo charger, Lightning. It's just a problem when everything else is USB-C. And it creates a big problem. Now, Apple made the argument that, well, it ruins innovation and it can't be harmful.
The thing
What
about
happened to the bricks?
the thing about innovation is, what have they done to improve Lightning? They haven't increased its transfer speeds or anything. So that's a 10-year-old technology right there. So
Yep.
what's innovative about that?
What they're saying is that this iPhone's not going to have USB-C because they already started working on this iPhone for like
Sure,
a couple of years now. So what they are saying is by next year's iPhone, they are speculating that it will have USB-C because supposedly they found something in the code of the software about
Well, I mean, if they're going to want to sell them in Europe, they're going to have to be USB-C.
So, yeah, I guess they could do that, but I don't think they're going to make separate phones just for Europe.
Yeah.
And then for the US, I think that could be more expensive for them. So I think if they are going to do it, they're going to do it for everybody. So, and going back to the event, I get why you're not excited. I know I'm falling off topic here. But I'm really curious if they're going to come out with some new AirPods. I'm really looking forward to maybe some new AirPods coming out on the some pros. So hopefully hopefully there is that in the event. The iPhone, is whatever. It's the same thing every year. New cameras, whatever. It's the greatest iPhone yet. That's basically the topic of the whole thing. It's just, but I do hope the watch has something better. I don't really have hope for it, but hey,
No.
they could surprise us. But I really do hope for a new pair of AirPods Pros because I don't know, these AirPods Pro, man, they're really, really faulty. They sound good, they sound great, but at least, and I've heard this a lot of times, that a lot of people have had to replace them at least once after you purchase them.
I'm possibly gonna have to replace mine, and I don't want to because they don't connect. I had problems where the right one will not connect. I literally see that it's connected, and I'll press connected again on the, I'll tap on it, and still won't. I'll have to plug in the left AirPod in my left ear for it to connect. And then there's the other problem where now with new Macs and iPhones and all, with the AirPods, they'll switch from, oh, you're using your Mac, great. Oh, you're gonna go to your phone, okay. But I noticed that if, like, when I am live, sometimes I'll click on the YouTube video that I'm live on, and it just to make sure it's working, and it'll, instead of staying on the Mac, it'll go to the iPhone, and then when I go back to the Mac, it won't go back, and I have to manually do it. On the watch OS 9 looks good. I'm curious about the medication, where it'll remind you about your medication, and it'll tell you, like, hey, you need to take this dose at this time and this time, and some new things with maps. I'm curious about that. But going back to this USB-C thing, they might be making them next year to say, fine, we'll go to Lightning. And yeah, they're not going to say, well, our Europe manufacturers are just going to make the phones for Europe, because they also need the Europe manufacturers to make the phone for the US. And also, you have your assembly lines working. Are you really going to double up your have one assembly line working on USB-C to Lightning and one on USB-C to USB-C? It makes no effing sense. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Well,
And
if they did that, and I was actually going to upgrade, I would just try to get a European phone. Skip the American version.
and then you have to worry about,
because
okay, we got it from Europe,
Yeah.
but then did they make the technologies different? Did they lower standards? Did they is Apple gonna go, you're a US market person, you're a US user, you got a Europe phone? Nope. Because you know what Apple's gonna they're gonna do that. And I mean, what was so cool about Lightning when it came out? I could use it on my iPad and on my iPhone, and I could use the same charger. On the iPad, you can't do that. If I want to charge my phone with an iPad charger, I can't do that. Now, there's a rumor that it might just come out with the iPhone 16, but there's also a part where they might go portless. The problem with going portless is, what's the problem with wireless charging? The technology and the speeds just aren't there yet.
They're not going portless anytime soon. I don't think into the iPhone 16, iPhone 17. I don't think I can see it then. Maybe the technology by then it's more, how do you say it? Improved, advanced. Yeah. There you go, advanced. But I don't see them doing it in the next two phones.
But do you think they're going to do it as a FU middle finger like this to? I literally put the middle finger up to Europe, like FU. We're going portless.
They could potentially, but if they do switch to USB-C and they give those people those cables, it's going to basically do the same problem that Europe is trying to avoid, which is causing harm to the environment. So I don't know. That's going to be a very, tricky situation for them because they're going to have to tread very carefully with that. Because if Europe is doing it for the environment, Apple really has to.
I don't think they're doing it for the environment.
I don't think that's the reason they're doing it. I think that's just like a bonus,
I think it's more for uniformity, right?
Yeah, so everybody, it's for
everybody has the same
more
thing.
compatibility between devices.
Yeah, exactly. And you're thinking, why are you gonna have all? Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't make any sense. And is it?
Well, I mean, if you have like a laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, some headphones, whatever, and all those are using different cables, and you just switch that to one cable, how much, you're saving all that space and all that environment. You're saving those resources for other things.
I mean, if I had USB-C on my phone right now, I could charge my Mac, I can charge my phone, and I can charge my vape with the same cable. So it's like,
well, actually, on that, did I text you or Jose? I made a mistake where, because sometimes USB-C cables kind of feel the same. Both my USB-C cables for the Mac and the iPad are really freaking long. They're about the same. My dumbass charged my iPad with my Mac charger. It overheated so bad. It was hot. It was so hot. And I was like, at first I didn't get it. I'm like, I'm not rendering photos on this. I'm not editing. I'm just using regular apps. I'm not watching videos. And even if I did that, it never got, I could feel it through the case. The keyboard case. Man, it was horrible. And then I was like, where's my Mac charger? Right there. So I think Apple's going to make it to where, no, you can't charge your Mac with this. Or no, you can't. They're gonna try and because they do want you to buy more chargers to charge your things. As someone, I don't remember what Gerard Shapiro from Taylor of Tech said. They're gonna try and upsell you on everything because, like, we'll get to the cheapest model of the iPad 10th gen. It's $329 right now, the 9th. Where does Apple make their money? The Apple Pencil, the folio cases, the this, the that. That's where they make their money. and that they're gonna try and make it to where if you charge your Mac with this iPad charger, it'll A, be slower, B, it'll overheat your Mac. If you charge your Mac with your if you charge your phone with your Mac charger or your iPad charger, your phone's gonna really overheat and you could destroy it. And they'll do it on purpose. I see them doing that for sure.
Well, if they do, the only thing they'll do, it would be like a software lock where, they won't let your Mac charger connect to your iPad because the wattage is too high or something. And I could see them doing that where the software will lock it out for it won't charge. Maybe.
That's true. I just don't know. I just don't
But
see it.
I don't see them doing it the other way around though because, even if you're charging your Mac with a 20-watt charger, it should still charge somewhat. Just very
I
slowly.
charge my phone with a 60 watt.
Did it overheat or anything?
No, it was fine.
Well, the software is supposed to take care of that. It's supposed to only get how much it could, realistically
Exactly,
use.
My iPad was overheating to the max. To the max. And I remember I took off the case. I took it off the case. You know when you're out in the sun and it is really hot and your phone kind of heats up? It kind of hurt to touch the iPad. So they need to take care of that. Let's switch to iOS 16. There are a lot of great features. I am using the beta right now. I'm not sure if you guys are. You can now customize your lock screen. You can put different apps and which apps will notify you. Your notifications will come down from the bottom, which is really cool. You can put different wallpapers. You can do Apple Pay Later, which is basically like having virtual credit. So if I wanted to buy my box of donuts, but I really didn't want to pay the whole price of $16 or whatever it is, I can pay over 6 weeks, and it's basically like a loan. There is new Apple CarPlay features especially with the virtual keys. 11 more states have been added to the license and ID feature virtually. And there are some more features with maps. Of course, there's a lot of new features. I just cannot remember. From the WWDC event or videos you've watched after, I'll start with you, Jose. Are there any features in iOS 16 that you are looking forward to?
Well, honestly, I haven't seen too many rumors about that. So I wouldn't know what rumors are coming up. So I would have to look into that to see what supposedly is coming out. But honestly, my biggest issue with their software is I'm having some glitches with it. So I just want it to be more stable. It seems like every time they release a new version, it's it's not that stable.
I mean, and it's every time, like, I remember iOS 15 I think it was 15.3 came out, and it was in December, and everyone hated the update. And the one thing my brother does, and I hate that a whole hell of a lot of Apple employees will do this, we'll just don't do the update. We'll just leave Apple. We'll just go get another phone. Mother effers, you're not getting the problem. And even if iOS 16 comes out, it's the most stable software. 16.1, 16.2, 3, whatever they release, it's going to be horrible. Watch.
But you know whose fault that is, though?
Whose?
It's the consumer's fault. Why?
Okay.
It's because a lot of consumers let this shit pass. They let it fly a lot. Look at the things they're doing with the iPhones. And the glitches you're having with the software. A lot of people were like, well, I just do this and it goes away. Or I just restart my phone and it just goes back to normal. Like, a lot of consumers are not caring anymore like they used to. So Apple's just kind of coasting through the fact that, oh, well, we can do whatever, and the consumers are just not going to care. So I think in our reality, the ones who are at fault are the consumers, because they're just letting Apple slide with all of this and not really making Apple try like they used to, give you the best software they possibly can. I'm not saying that back in the day when Steve Jobs was, around, they didn't have glitches, because they did. It's just lately, I just think that the software hasn't been as stable as, you know, people that started with iPhones are, used to. I started with the 5C, and the software back then was incredible. I liked the software. It was nice. It wasn't glitchy. It worked. As soon as it hit iOS 8, though,
Hmm.
dude, I just started having so many problems with iOS 8. Like sometimes my phone would become unusable because I just couldn't use VoiceOver. Which is I use
Hmm.
VoiceOver constantly. So if I can't use my phone, what is the point of having one?
Well, iOS
So
7 was like that too because they let a designer design the software, which is not what
the
you're supposed to do.
Johnny Ive is the one that
Eh,
designed that one.
Yeah, and Johnny Ive is great, and he made
Yeah,
Apple what it is. And now he has his company, and Apple's the main client. So we really have not left the Johnny Ive design era. It's just
yeah.
he just doesn't work for Apple. He has his own company. He actually spoke at the NFB convention in 2019, which was even funnier. Um, iOS 7 was bad. iOS 8 was bad. iOS 12 was ridiculous. My phone would slow down like crazy.
I
Um,
think iOS 6 was an incredible software. I
it
think
was.
iOS 6 is one of the best ones.
Well, I mean, if we're done with the iPhone talk, do you guys want to proceed to the iPad? Well,
Yeah, let's
actually,
or
I did have one thing. I want to talk the cameras because Jesus and I were having this debate right now. Look, and we were talking about is the file size going to be a 48? No, it's going to be a 12. Right now, if I go on vacation, the Apple says you can take great photos, and the photos on vacation are magnificent. They are glory. They are the things you can do with this camera are magnificent. They are beyond awesome. No matter what you do with how incredible this phone is, an Android phone can take better pictures in some ways because of how high the megapixels are. Now, Apple's taking care of that with two of its models, not all. But for me, I think there are other phones. For example, the Android phones can zoom out to 100 times versus the iPhone, which can only zoom out to 30. Um, the iPhone does, like when you take a picture, it's snappy. Androids, even the Samsung Galaxy S120 and 122 Ultra or S22 Ultra, they're not as snappy and they don't capture fabrics as well as say the iPhone does. The iPhone has more natural effects, so it's not look like if you take a picture of something red, it's not like a I painted it red or whatever. It's natural colored. It's not manufactured, whereas Android cameras do manufacture it. However, I can take a picture with a regular digital camera and it'll still be better in terms of resolution than, say, a regular photo from my iPhone, no matter what kind of feature on the iPhone I use. So, Jesus, I'll come to you first, just because we were talking about this. I mean, what are your thoughts here? Can Apple really can they improve? Can they compete based on those features I just listed?
All right, so first of all, like I told you in the text messages, I think a standalone camera is basically uncomparable to any phone, whether it be Android or iPhone at this time. Uh, just because cameras are not to that point yet where you can just drop your standalone camera and just use your phone. But on the Android side, yes, you can zoom out and you can zoom in as much as you possibly can, as 100 times or whatever. But it does ruin the quality of the picture. It does ruin the quality, and also the Androids, especially the Samsung Galaxy 22 Ultra. That one, well, it doesn't work very well at night. The iPhone tends to capture more light and environment light into the camera, so it uses all of that to its potential. The Samsung does not do that very well. And it's like if you move your hand a lot, it's not really, it doesn't have great stabilization as the iPhone does at night. So that's, two of the differences that they have. Can Android fix that? Possibly they can. I think the one that really has a chance of doing it is Samsung, if anybody does. of course, you have all the other third party ones like Huawei and all those that are doing incredible things with the cameras. But again, the software also has to do a lot with that, just because they are different softwares, different UIs than your average Samsung or anything like that, the OnePlus or any very well known Android manufacturers. So I think they both have their pros and cons. I think you'll be just fine with a Samsung if you have it. I don't think you'll be suffering too much. Um, I think a lot of people can be happy with that, and I think a lot of people could be happy with their iPhones. I think iPhone phones have come to a place where it kind of settled down. We're kind of coasting now. There's only so much you can do with these devices now that is really going to put consumers like in, oh my God, this is a new thing that I want this and I want this now. Like when the first iPhone came out, that I don't think we're going to have that kind of moment in a very long time again. Because, like I said, devices, the iPhones, the phones, just smartphones in general have basically just come to a point where it's just like I said, it's just coasting.
It's the same
And
thing.
I think until the foldables really come into play, maybe that could be a game changer. If Apple came up with the foldable phone, I think people would be hell of excited for that phone, honestly.
Going back to flip phones.
Because no doubt, and honestly, the reason I say you'll be happy with both of them is just because I'm actually thinking of switching to Android myself. Um, just because I'm kind of tired of iPhone. I'm kind of tired of the glitches. Of course, they say you may have more glitches on Android, but um, I don't know. I'm kind of tired of the same thing, same iOS, same everything. It's just the same, bro. Like as a person that loves tech, I just need something new, something more exciting,
Sure.
something that's going to give me that excitement of exploring a new software, excitement of learning new things. Like I would. That's what I want out of a phone, and I'm not really getting that with my iPhone anymore.
Are you worried about the fracturedness? Like you were telling me over text that about social media they're not gonna adapt to 25,000 different cameras, 280 different cameras are gonna say, here's our resolution, screw it, go with it, right? And I mean, look at carriers with Android. Carriers can decide, I'm not gonna give you this software. This new software update. uh, the phone manufacturers can decide, I don't want Android's new update. And Android's never going to force people to do it. They're more about, do it if you want. So
Yeah,
my Android phone can be slower than your Android phone. My carrier might allow me to get your carrier might allow you to get the update. My AT&T might tell me, sucker, F you, right? Are you
yeah.
prepared for all that?
I think it's also part of the excitement.
Okay.
Kind of discovering this. Knowing what it is. Because I don't want to stay with, what ifs. What if I did
Sure.
this? What if I did that? I kind of want to go into it and just taking whatever comes with it. And hopefully, hoping that next year, if I don't like the Android, I have the money to get an iPhone and go back to that. But honestly, what I would probably do is not trade in my iPhone and just keep it just in case I do not like the Android. You know what I mean? And I could
Yeah.
just switch back to iOS. But yeah, I am prepared for all that. What I'm really concerned about, what really it's kind of stopping me from doing that is, of course, just like anybody, their fucking ecosystem, iMessage, fucking FaceTime, and the Apple Watch, and all that bullshit.
Apple
Like,
Pay and you have
yeah, it's
various
like all
services.
that. Honestly, that's the only thing that's keeping me here more than the actual, you know, things that could happen to me with Android. Because
Hmm.
I was using TalkBack the other day on my mom's old phone, and they take you through a fucking tutorial on how to do what, like copy and paste, how to go through pages, how to click on something, how to, they take you through a whole tutorial on how to use the phone. So I think TalkBack is actually getting pretty up there, compared to iOS. Of course, I haven't tried everything, so I can't really say, oh my God, it's the same thing. But I am willing to explore it and see what comes out of it. Like,
You could add it to a line, and instead of deactivating the iPhone, you could
right.
add it. It's a little more pricey, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, especially because that's an older phone, you could use that instead of having to buy a new Android. Because with Android, you have to ask yourself, do I want a Pixel? Do I want this? Do I want the Google Pixel 6? Do I want this Android phone here? Do I want that thing here? Do you think that iPhones can get to a regular camera, and do you think they'll stop playing catch up with Android?
Great question. Um, I think iPhones can get to a regular camera. I think Apple, since they don't actually make camera themselves, I think they are going to do that. They are going to try to make it into a standalone camera because the reason, because I mean, going into the iPad, but not going into it, but like the reason the iPad hasn't become a laptop or a computer, even though it's more than capable of doing it, is because they're still selling Macs. They can't do that because they still need to get the revenues from Macs. So,
We're gonna go
um,
into that actually.
so if the same thing comes with the phones, Apple doesn't make cameras, so why not make it into a standalone camera? That way, they're going to get a lot more people buying iPhones and putting down their Sony's or their whatever they're using at the time.
Canons, Nikons, yeah.
So it's like, why not? So I think that could be a thing about catching up with Android. Yeah, I think they're gonna. I
Widgets,
think
look
they're
at them.
gonna be.
You've been able to customize your lock screen with Android for over eight
Yeah.
years. You've been able to do widgets for over 10 years. You've and oh, now you can do widgets. Now you can do widgets on your lock screen. Now you can do widgets on your iPad. You've been able to do widgets on Android tablets and phones. You've been able to customize your lock screen. There's a lot of things that you still don't have reverse charging.
And the thing is that I hear from a lot of Android consumers that have dabbled into the iPhone, that the widgets are not even close to what they are on Android. So yeah, they have widgets, but nothing compared to what Android is. You can do so much with the widgets on Android that you just can't on the iPhone as yet. Because we don't have a lot of third-party apps on their widgets. We have very few. A lot of those apps are from Apple. A lot of the widgets are from Apple. News, calendar, weather, you know, music, Spotify, yeah, they have one, but it's very simple. It's simplistic. It's not really much with it. Google Maps has one, but which is cool, and I like the widget for Google Maps, but you don't really have a lot of third-party apps working with widgets right now. I don't know if that's up to Apple or developers. I really don't know what's up with that, but Androids have a lot more widgets from third-party apps and stuff like that work with them that iPhone just doesn't do as yet.
Right. And that's true. Jose, I mean, can Apple catch up? Apple iPhones catch up to a regular Nikon and Sony and all those Canons? And of course, there are different types. You can get a $500 Nikon. It won't be the same as a $900 Nikon. I've seen them. I've worked with them. They are incredible. And also, is Apple going to catch up to Android devices? What's your take?
I guess my take would be that phone cameras right now are probably good enough no matter what phone you get. Like, we could talk about how, the iPhone captures the details or those details, but at the end of the day, you grab an iPhone, an Android, they're going to take good pictures. Yeah, you can nitpick these things or those things, but it's a phone camera, I can't expect, $1,000 standalone camera for this phone to compare to that, and I don't know if they will get to that point, but for what you use a phone for, I don't really think you need to get to that point because those kind of cameras, you get in the thousands for cameras.
Yep.
That's more for like professional photographers.
Right.
And a professional photographer is not going to use their phone for a camera because they know all the settings. They know their preferred camera, and they know exactly how they like their settings. And the phone cameras just don't do all that. Yeah, you could do a couple things, but it's not like what a standalone camera can do. So I
And
think that
you go ahead.
yeah, so I think that the phones they're good enough right now. I don't, I'm not a professional photographer or anything, so but I could grab my phone, take a picture, and it'll be good enough.
And you
Um,
have different settings you can mess with too. I mean, I could let me fix my filter here. Let me fix the light. Let me change the angle. Let me do this. Let me do that. There's 1,000, probably 10,000 different settings you could do on iPhone's camera alone. And it's
Yeah.
like I don't have to take. Back in the 2000s, my family would have to take like my brother had his digital camera, my dad had his camera, and he put the little strap over his shoulder, and he would have to. And you would have to do now. I can do all that with an iPhone, and I can share it to Facebook, and people can write comments. I can write captions. I can do, but again, with these phones and their cameras, you have to take it like they are great cameras, but you still have to take them into DaVinci Resolve and Affinity Photo and Procreate and all these different apps in order to get those kinds of get the pixels you want, get the photo aperture that you want, get the colors you want, get the schemes you want. And of course with a 48 megapixel camera, it makes it easier to where you don't have to make as many adjustments because people are having to go increase it by 3 times just to get even close to doing all that. And now you don't have to. It'll be 2 megapixels behind Android phones like the Samsungs which are at 50 megapixels. Oh, 48 over 50. Right? Do you think that is it that the technology just isn't there yet for a phone to catch up to an Icon or a Canon or a Sony, or is it maybe companies are going, our cameras are good enough. Most customers are not YouTubers who need to take it into DaVinci and Adobe and photo editors and Photo Editor Pro or whatever.
yeah, I think it's probably more use case. Like people who use their phones don't need the same quality as someone who's a professional photographer. And companies try to do to the least common denominator, to save as much money as possible. So they're not going to put $1,000 camera equipment worth of stuff in your phone if that applies
You're
to
not going
like
to use it.
2% of their customers.
And they have softwares that I can get camera 360.
Well, that's what the thing is. They have these. Most of it is because their pixels are like they have a 12 megapixel camera. Everything else is software. The processor processes these pictures to make it look as good as an Android with a fixed 50 megapixel camera, and you could compare them. But as I said, they're pretty much the same thing. Of course, you could nitpick the color accuracy here, or some detail got lost there, but you could tell what that picture is at the end of the day.
And I think most consumers just carry their phones everywhere. I don't think they're gonna really. I remember back then when my parents always just carried a digital camera. It was kind of like this. It wasn't big. It was kind of like it was just a digital camera with a little screen, and you would take pictures. But just the fact that now you can take your phone and just do the exact same thing, and like Jason said, just share it everywhere. It's pretty amazing how we have it now. You know, can compared to the time in 2007, 2008, 2006, around those times where cameras at those times were not very great on phones, even when you had your flip phones and it had video phones and stuff like that, or you know, your NV1s, NV2s with the cameras on it. They weren't very well. They weren't very good, per se. But how far technology has come to in cameras these days, it's gone far.
Yeah, and I mean, in 2006, my dad we went to Camp Bloomfield, which was the most amazing camp ever. They did Camp Bloomfield still, but it's at a different location. I'm like, shut up. Anyway, I'm not gonna go there. It'll get me mad. The viewers are used to me being mad, but not on technology like this. We used to go to camp. Go to Disney, and my dad at camp would take his photo printer, the photo printer, and then you'd hook up the camera. either to your computer or the printer and buy the photo paper, the film paper. But it wasn't, it was like that, and it wasn't like the photo ray, the what is it called, the Polaroid film. It was just like a regular picture, right? But you'd print it, and that's what he would do, or he would take it, put it on his computer, and edit them, or then put it on CDs, or you'd print it, and that's how you would do it now. And now it's crazy. Now you have these little $30 printers. I don't know if you guys knew this. They're like little Canon printers, and they're like $30, and you just connect via Bluetooth, and it comes with a set of paper, and you print. I'm going. My little cousin, uncle, actually tried that, and I'm like, he told me, I'm like, wait, you're doing what? And for me, I was like, I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I'm going, are you taking me back to 2003? Like,
well, I remember that we used to just buy the disposable cameras, when you would go on vacation, and just take them somewhere to get them developed,
You take them to Walgreens.
Or like the other cameras that took the film, the actual film, and then you have to go take it out of the camera, take the film to them. It takes like about a week for you to get your pictures, and then you have to pick out the pictures that actually look good and the ones that don't, and
you can't put a filter.
Yeah,
and they were the cheap places. Like they're not really professional photo editors, so you couldn't go, hey, can you? There was none of that. You had to kind of. I
got my shit Save On, bro, before Save On became CVS, bro.
Oh, is that what it was before CVS? Dang.
Yeah, Save On, yeah. Save On Drugs, I think that's what it's called. So I used to get my there, so like sometimes, I remember my parents or my family, they would like have to take a ton of pictures of the same thing just in case one of them didn't come out right. Just because... you have to nitpick on what the fuck you want to do.
Yeah, if those pictures were good enough, and our cell phones could take better pictures, then I don't know what the issue is,
Yeah. Well, and I remember the disposable ones. My dad would be like, here. Yeah, I would have like little field trips for school, and he'd go. I was like 7, 8. He'd be like, here, mijo, take this, and then we'll print it later. And it had like 10 photos. You could take. So I had to really be careful of what I wanted. Because right now I could take 80 photos on one trip and not, whatever. Unless it says, oh, your iPhone storage is full, which mine says that a lot now. Should have gone for the 512. Fuck. Anyway, back then it's like 10, 20 photos and you're done. And then you couldn't take pictures. So yeah, I think that I was just curious about that, because that's a huge discussion right now, and it's the main selling point for companies. It's the camera. I mean, iPhone comes out with such good features you actually will never hear about. You will never hear about it. Tim Cook won't even talk about the products. He'll summarize them. He sends it off to Craig, and then we'll hear from some girl named Holly and Tally and Marky Mark and Jackson, whatever, Sigmund Freud. And they'll talk about the chip, and they'll talk about the camera, and then they'll go, and there's these 20 other features we're not going to talk about.
I mean, yeah, we don't find out until we actually have the phones, and then people start discovering new. But at the same time, I think it's cool seeing the other people that have worked on the device, on the software, tell you about the software or the device directly, as they're the ones that actually developed it and worked on it, instead of somebody else who was just on the sidelines. Especially with Tim Cook. Honestly, to be honest with you, I'd rather have other people explain it to me than his ass, because just the way he talks, it's just very annoying to me.
Good morning. Apple has great tools that help the regular consumer. Sorry.
It's just fucking annoying, just how the way he talks. It's like, dude, you should have been a fucking professor, bro. At a fucking preschool, that's what you should have been.
I would not attend that class. Good morning, students. Oh, whatever. Well, good morning to him. Steve Jobs, no one will ever replace Steve Jobs. Even though he didn't really develop the software, he had this vision. The way he spoke, it has this many. You can take the camera and do this. If you render it this way, it has this specs, and this. Here's how it works. He literally could understand it, and the way he said it, it was like, wow. It's like he actually was in the Apple headquarters coding this. You know what I mean?
Well, he was
And
very involved with the teams, very involved. I don't think Tim is as
no,
involved as Steve Jobs was at the time.
he's too busy doing interviews and fucking being everywhere, being famous. Steve Jobs rarely did interviews, and I now as an idolizer of Steve Jobs, I wish he did more. But then I realized he was busy making our products amazing. Braille screen input, FaceTime. You know. Oh, by the way, I'm excited for unsending a message and editing a message after you send it, and of course, share play and messages. Either. I'm sorry, I just had to go over that. But I mean, I was just curious about that. Let's go into the iPad. By the way, we're already at a little over an hour. iPhone took an hour. Yeah, this is gonna be
Already 10.
yeah. This is gonna be a multi-episode podcast for sure. Jesus. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus is our audio editor, so you know, give him love. Give him love. He needs it.
I'll try my fucking best, guys. If it sounds like, well, you can blame me. And
Yes, blame him because I'm not messing with it. And it's gonna be tough for you because we're both on mics, so it makes it easier. He's not, so it's like.
I mean, I'm gonna try my best to cover his background, the AC, even though it's not like
It's not
loud
blaring.
for us. But I think in the recording it would sound a little different. But
And I'll do
I
my
will
best in
try.
Final Cut because you
But
can do voice isolation and all that.
so hopefully we can take away his AC because I wouldn't want him to turn off the AC just for the fucking podcast.
You know, it's
Fuck
still
that
97
shit.
degrees outside, right? Over here.
Shit, I bet it
it's
is.
like
man.
98 out here too.
He lives in a fucking devil's asshole.
No,
dog,
no,
man.
right now it's 97.
No, yeah, Vegas is about that right now.
Yeah.
I think the lowest it's gotten this week is 96. Yeah, Jose lives in an area, ladies and gentlemen. He lives in an oven.
Yeah. You know, I call it a deviled asshole. That's what I call it.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Let's go ahead and go into the main man itself, the main product. Well, the iPad. And we're gonna start simple with the lower level iPad in the lineup. The iPad, what's called the 10th generation, or if you want to say the iPad X. So you know Apple would do it. You know they would. By the way, they're when they iPhone Pros. Stop. I hate their names now. I can't stand it. So the iPad 9th generation goes for $329. It is really for people that don't care about all the bells and whistles and the promotion display and center stage and this. It is for people that really, I mean, your grandma could use it, your grandpa could use it, your aunt could use it, everyone could use it. Even your little sibling could use it. I'll get him an iPad mini. iPad mini is more powerful than the $329 iPad. And there are a few changes that have come out in recent years. You know, they put a new chip, they put one extra thing like that, or they got rid of the white bezels, and then they shipped it with 64 gigs of memory storage instead of 32, and then they shipped it with the 20-watt USB-C fast charge brick. That's really the $329 value. And now it has center stage and the A13 chip. Ooh, wee. 9 to 5 Mac has actually released new rumors, their source, and they say that Apple might put in the A14 chip, which is not too much faster than the A13, by the way. They also say it might have USB-C, no Lightning, which also means it'll be like the rest of the lineup, all USB-C, and it might lose the Apple Pencil first generation, and they might go to the Apple Pencil second generation, getting rid of that cap, the Apple Pencil cap, and that charger and the case. It's all useless, and then you lose the cap, and then yeah. Now, they have to, if they do that, USB-C and all that, they have to change the chassis. They can't be keeping the rounded design, which, you might get close to what the iPad Air is. it won't get any external monitor support or virtual memory swap or even anything else since it has the A14 chip, but they might also go from the 10.2 size display to the 10.5, 10.5 inch display, which is still not the same as the Air because they're trying to differentiate. The Air is at a 10.9 inch. Wrote that down wrong. It still won't be It won't be a laminated display. It will still look ugly, which means it won't have ProMotion and it won't have Liquid Retina and it won't have mini LED. Well, they won't do that with the Air either. And of course, it will still have the home button. That's what the rumor is. Another rumor says it'll most likely just have the regular or just have the home button with Touch ID. That the crazy thing about this is if it does happen, you might see a $429 iPad because you're going to do all those you're going to change the design language and not raise the price. I don't think so. So gentlemen, real quick, because this is a very easy topic to go into with this iPad, what's your take on those things? Jose, we'll start with you.
All right. I think if it does go up to that price with those specs that you just mentioned, I would just say go for the iPad mini. It's a little more. I think how much is the 64?
Like,
how much
is it? $599 or
no.
The one
I think it's 525 or
something like that.
Something like that. It's a little more, but you get, a better chip. You have USB-C, you get 5G if you want that. You get the laminated display, you get the dual speakers, I feel like it's a little better than just a regular base iPad for just a little more. But the thing about that iPad is it's a great entry iPad if it stays at that price. Because, you can't really get a good tablet for that price that's not an Apple product.
Yeah, it is a very good tablet. It is pretty fast for being an old iPad. It is an incredible tablet. I don't disagree with that. However, can it stay at the $329 price range price level if it gets that design change?
Well, I mean that's up to Apple. It comes down to if they feel like all those upgrades justify a price increase. Apple could do whatever they want. They could raise it up to $500 if they wanted to.
But then they're hitting iPad mini, and then you're going, okay, well, why would I? They have to keep it below. I think they have to keep it below 500. If they could go at 500, 499, but I think they have to keep it below that because, I mean, it's only then you're hitting iPad mini, then you're hitting the iPad Air, which is what 599 or 600, something like that. So for me, I would think they're Apple sees this as either a loss or breaking even profit, and they're gonna upsell you. I think they want to they want to do this, and they might with USB-C now and all that. The chassis is gonna be changed. They might accept the Magic Keyboard. But it would be a fatter display. Much bigger bezels. It would have. So, for me, I mean, I think they need to change the design language. It's still going to look like an ugly iPad if they don't laminate the display at least and all of that. However, the accessories are the ones that are really going to make Apple the profit, and I think they're okay with that. Look, we lose kind of a lot of profit with this $329 thing, but we've got to, if I let them buy a $129, $130 Apple Pencil, they're already shipping it with that 20 brick or whatever, and it's fine. But again, I think they're going to upsell people on the, hey, look at the pencil, look at the keyboard, look at the folios, look at this, look at that. Jesus, what's your take on all this before we move on?
I think I don't really have any more thoughts than Jose had there. I think they could also just increase the price just to get people to just get the mini, to just get people thinking, well, if I'm going to get that, I might as well get the mini. So that way people just go for more of the expensive one.
I'm sorry, but I just looked it up. It's the iPad mini 6, and it's $499 for the
Oh,
64 gig version.
Oh. Wow.
So
And so wait, hold on. So it is the sixth generation. I had to make
yeah,
we have to correct
yes,
that. Okay.
yes, and it is 499. So if it's 425, an extra $75 gets you those upgrades.
And it already comes with 64 gigs of RAM. So why not just get a $500 product? And
that's
it's
what I'm saying.
smaller.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like they could raise up the price, but it could also be for to get people to just get the more expensive one and leave the other people, the smaller percentages that don't have that money to get. They don't have the extra $75 to get the other one, and then have them get the cheaper iPad. But most consumers are just going to say, "What am I getting this if I can just get an iPad Mini here for an extra 75 or plus tax another 100 and something dollars?"
Well, I mean, it would be
So
plus tax too. So
yeah,
like,
so it's
Yeah, that's what he just said.
you know,
I
so
meant
it's
the
the
regular
other,
iPad would still
yeah,
be.
the regular iPad, yeah. So like I don't know, I think it could just get people to really think about what they want and what they care about, and if they really want to do that, it's kind of like the SE and the Mini. They were not very far in price. So do you want Face ID or do you want Touch ID? Do you want OLED or do you just want Retina? So what do you really care about? I think it's going to be about the same. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't really have more thoughts than Jose had. So I think we can move on to the next subject.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. And the last thing I'll say on that one is, I mean, the iPad ninth gen literally doesn't even have a Retina, a liquid Retina. Doesn't have OLED. Doesn't have LED. That's literally how bad it is. But again, it's for people that don't care about that, like you and I do. Um, let's go into iPad OS. So, my least favorite. They released Stage Manager, ladies and gentlemen, an iPad OS 16, and they did not give you the ability to customize your lock screen, and they limited the widgets, and they didn't do a lot of shit. And it leaves you thinking, with Stage Manager, you can load. I can without Stage Manager, I can load the same apps. Your apps will be, if you have 8 apps open at the same. Usually, you only have 2 to 3, and they're on the left column, and then your others are on the side, and you can just tap them as easily. And if they're not closed, they're just gonna load really, really quickly. They'll be really snappy, and you won't need to load them. It makes no sense to have Stage Manager to me and to a lot of others. It just makes no sense. And Apple, being Apple, said we're only going to put Stage Manager on M1 iPad products because M1 is 10 times faster than the A12Z chip. And I'm just saying that sarcastically. I have an M1 iPad Pro. Before I sold the other iPad that I had, guess what? It was the same thing. It really was a little bit faster. Just a little bit. It was a 2019. It wasn't all that fast. Even people who have a 2018 iPad Pro will tell you, it's a little faster. It ain't that much. So you can do so much more on iOS 16 than you can on iPad OS 16. So, Jose, since you also have an iPad, I'll come to you first. What do you think of them, limiting a lot of the Stage Manager and all these other features to iPad Pro M1? And second, what do you think of them nitpicking on iPad OS 16 and not giving you a lot of the features like customizing your lock screen on iOS 16?
I don't know. I feel like they purposely make it bad because if you could do on an iPad what you could do on a laptop, they're scared that no one's gonna buy a laptop. You know, and that's where their big bucks come in because what is it, the MacBook Pros cost like $2,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like if I could get an iPad, the mini, for $500, and I don't need a MacBook anymore, I'm not going to spend those extra $2,000 on Apple. And I think that's what their concern is because I really don't see a point to it because I mean they're powerful enough to do these things, that are restricted only to Mac OS. So I don't feel like there's any reason they shouldn't have access to that. And for what is it called, Stage Manager? Um, I don't know. It doesn't seem that big of an upgrade to me. It's not, split. I have the mini, so I don't have that big of a screen anyways. Two apps with split screen is good enough. I don't need, however many they let you open at once. And I don't really know that many people who do need that many apps open at once.
I mean, even if you have 5 apps open at once or even 3, you're still kind of thinking, I have slide over. These apps will come up from the top, and I can come to this side down here at the bottom corner and bring this app up. I can just tap it and it'll pop up. Do I really need to make tab groups? And do I really need... Oh, that's another thing I'm excited about. Jesus Christ, it's like all these things are coming up. Do I really need Stage Manager when there's already multitasking and slide over and all of that on the iPad? No, I don't. But, I mean, what... Let's just say that there are people that are excited about Stage Manager. What is your take on the fact that they limited it just to an iPad Pro M1?
As I said, I don't really see the reason why. I mean, even the newer products that are like the Mini, for example, I feel like the processor is good enough, and it should be able to handle that. The reason they're limiting it to M1, I have no idea why. It's not like
Yeah, their arguments are whack. They're stupid. You know, and for me, it's like the A12Z and all the way back to the 2018 Pro's A12X chip can do the exact same thing. And by the way, they said, well, because it does have memory swap and it does have this and that. The iPad Air 5 gets a lot of the features that iPhone OS 16 provides, and it doesn't have memory swap, and it doesn't have it comes with 5G. So and some don't come with 5G. So their arguments make absolutely no sense. Hey Zeus, what are your thoughts, Carmen? I know you don't have an iPad, but Apple, you know how they argue.
um, well, since I don't have an iPad, it's kind of hard for me to argue the point. But at the same time, I have noticed how they have really cheaped out on the iPads. It's like they gave the iPad Pro the M1 chip, but it's still limited, just like having a regular iPad. So I just don't see the point on why you would want to get an iPad Pro just for the M1 chip. I get having an iPad Pro, but I just don't get somebody just getting it just because it has the M1 chip. And about iPad OS, it sounds really like Apple. It sounds just always making up bold for it. Like Jose said, it's mainly they don't want to make it as your default computer. A lot of our smartphones, man, are just as capable as being a computer. Samsung actually makes a device that you can convert your phone into a computer. Of course, there's some complex things involved with that, glitches and but our smartphones can do it. How come the iPads can't? How come they're not letting it? They're just not letting it be a full-fledged computer. They're preventing you from doing that. And I think iPad OS is more than capable. I think the iPad is more than capable of doing it. But, like Jose said, they're getting all the profit from the Macs, the Mac Studios, the iMacs, all that stuff. Of course, an iPad is never going to be able to compete with an iMac or a desktop, but it could definitely compete with a laptop, in a smaller form factor. So, my takes on iPad OS is I just wish they were better. I wish that Apple could do so much better, so much more with it that you're basically getting a form with iOS. They're just calling it something else. And that's all you're doing.
And not even the complete set of iOS. Everything on iOS, you can do on iPad OS. And for the first time ever, they're not only limiting Stage Manager to iPad Pro and iPad Pro M1, but even on the regular iPads without the M1 chip, they are literally, and I have iPad OS 16 beta. I can't customize my home screen. Oh, I have the weather app. Yay, because I totally use it. And I don't have an iPhone, so I guess I can't use it. There's so many things on iPhone OS that could be on the iPad, and yet they're not doing it. And it pisses me off. Now, could they be... Jose and I have talked about this. Jose, you were mentioning that maybe it could be they don't know what they're doing with iPad OS anymore, or they don't have any more ideas, or they're trying to make it to where you don't skip the iPad and just go to the Mac. What is your take there?
Well, I think what I said last time was that it's like they've made this artificial line where they're like, we can't cross that line over to, a laptop replacement. So it's kind of in this weird little box where they don't want it to be a phone replacement. They don't want it to be a laptop replacement. So they don't really know what to do with it because they kind of put it in this box. And they're not willing to, expand it. They're not willing to give it more Mac features or more phone features, And by phone features, I mean more iOS features. I mean, they slowly do it. They slowly add, what did they just add, like the weather app? Mm-hmm. But there's still no calculator app, and that's...
Yeah.
I feel like a calculator is more useful than a weather app.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like in this weird box where they're like, it's a laptop, but we're not going to let you be able to do desktop stuff on it. It's an iPhone, but we're not going to give you all the iOS features. So I feel like they're not sure where to take it now because they kind of, wrote themselves into a box, basically.
I think they just trapped themselves by... I think they felt by named it an iPad OS, and they just don't know what to do.
I did have a question, Jason. When you came down the other day, your iPad, was that the M1 version? Do you remember that?
When I came down, what?
The
other day, I was like, hold on.
Well, it's like a year ago. The other day,
I'm like, hold on. Let me check my itinerary, like my flight data, because yes, it was the M1 iPad.
Because what I was gonna say is, that was before I got this iPad, and I have not noticed any difference besides maybe it being a little faster. But they do the same things. I haven't noticed any issues, so I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
There is no difference. Yeah, it's a little bit faster, but they software locked the M1 too. So, and I just looked something up. The iPad Pro is one of their least selling iPads. It's being beat by the Mini and the Air.
Well, I could buy a MacBook Air for that price,
Yeah, and exactly. And if you hit, and now the new MacBook Airs are starting at like $11.99. What the fuck is that? For me, yeah, they've got themselves into a box. But for me, I'm like you, and I have told you this over and over because I have a Mac and an iPad, and I can do the tests. All we even want increased battery health and all those features. And even if you put Final Cut on the iPad, we're still going to need to connect it to like a monitor, a Samsung monitor or a studio display or not. I mean, if you're a pro user and you want a pro display XDR for $5,000 or another stand for another $1,000 for $6,000, or if you want to plug it into whatever, we're still going to need more room. You just put some, Luma, put all kinds of apps, put Logic Pro X, put Audacity on the iPad, put different things that you can find on a MacBook. Even if you do that, guess what? Fine. Limit it to M1s. Go ahead. But a lot of people said, oh, maybe they're doing that because they're going to put Mac features like increased battery health and retention and all of that. And they never did. And what's so funny about that is, I mean, how are you going to expect an M1 Pro iPad Pro or M1 iPad Pro to sell when you don't even put a good enough list of features on there? Because even if you put DaVinci Resolve and Adobe does make for iPad, but even Logic Pro X, Final Cut Pro, um, and a few other apps that are on the Mac. Even if you do that, it's still an iPad. It's still limited.
So
People
I
are
guess
still gonna go,
my
"Hey, I
question to
do
you,
need a Mac."
Jason, is what makes your iPad a Pro compared to my iPad? Like, what can yours do that mine can't? What justifies the Pro
It
name?
doesn't, because okay, I have a bigger display. Yes. Okay, I can actually use a Magic Keyboard with it. So what? You can use a Smart Folio on yours if you really want it. I don't know if they make third-party keyboards,
They do
but
make third-party
they
keyboards. They make
now they do.
third-party keyboard cases. So you know.
Exactly. So you can do third parties with it. Okay, fine. Yours doesn't have promotion. I notice it, sure, but can I live without it? I'm gonna be honest, no, because I've had it. Okay, mine has 4 speakers. Yours has 2. Both of ours can use the Apple Pencil at the same speed with the same. You can use Notability. I can use Notability. You can, which is a third party app. Um, so really, I don't see a whole lot of. Okay, mine has the lidar sensor and the mini LED display and all of. Okay, fine, but there's really no. I mean, aside from hey, you can do more on it. Sure, maybe it's a little faster. Yeah, yes. What chip is yours using? A15, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's using the A15. It's using the better version of the A15.
yeah. It's which is newer. And okay, fine, but the only reason I got the Pro was I do YouTube videos. I need all that video editing power. I need the bigger display. I need all of that.
You know, and
But
it's interesting because the two things that would separate it as a Pro is basically the display. You know, it's 120 hertz and it's mini LED. You know,
and of course maybe the speakers and maybe
the
the lidar
speakers
sensor
maybe.
and maybe
Yeah,
but a lot of that, I mean,
a
I
lot
don't
of that you
think I
could
would
get
notice
somewhere
a
else
difference.
too. No, I mean unless you use lidar a lot. You know,
Yeah, and I
or
really don't. And I love having the bigger display, so your iPad would kind of be a little weird to me. But it's still a very good iPad. You can still use it for
well,
school. You can
well,
still do a
my,
lot
my
of
my
the same
issue is
things.
not like my issue is not really like the difference of like oh my screen is bigger or whatever. I'm saying like what the new Air. You know what separates the new Air from the Pros. You know, there's not really a big
A two
difference. You know,
speaker system. I don't. It doesn't have a mini LED. Has an OLED, which
no, I'm saying those are just features. I'm just saying like in
sure,
general,
but
like what can you
I think
do?
you
he's
can still do
talking
the same
about.
shit.
I think he's talking software wise, speed wise,
Yeah,
and
you know, like
I think hardware. Yeah, it's more than understood that it's going to have more
it's a more
features hardware
expensive
wise.
device. You know, it's gonna have
You know,
better
but
things.
I think he's referring on the fact that
You do
is
the same thing.
how fast is yours? Can you render video on his that you can't do on yours, or
That I
just vice
can't
versa?
answer
You know.
because on the video I don't know. I don't. I don't know what kinds of support there are. He has iMovie. If I'm out on the go, guess what? I've got Adobe and iMovie on the iPad. I can use
So
Adobe on the iPad Mini. I
so
can
you
use
know,
iMovie on the iPad Mini.
I
The only
agree with what you were saying. Is if you want to segregate, the M1 MacBook, not MacBooks, the M1 iPads. If you want to make them truly, justify that Pro name, give just those the Mac features. Give them Final Cut Pro. Give them, that, and for the rest of the iPads, just have them as they are. Because right now, there's nothing really besides the hardware upgrades that obviously you're paying for because a $500 device versus a how much was that, like
mine
1100.
was it should be 1200, but that education discount helped a ton.
Yeah,
And
so
you're
see.
right. And it's also I can't justify someone getting the iPad Pro. If you're an artist, I definitely get the iPad Pro. You have 11 or 12.9 f fucking inches. You almost have a 13-inch MacBook in your hand. That for a blank canvas for an artist is absolutely bizarrely perfect. It is amazing. I've made thumbnails on it and it's but again, I could justify someone getting an iPad Air. The only thing that bothers me is A, it doesn't have the ProMotion, which definitely helps with HDR content. It does not have A couple other things. The four speakers. My thing sounded like a stereo playing a Dodger game tonight. If they don't need a lot of the pro features, I can justify them getting an Air. I can't justify a lot of people getting a Pro. If I can justify someone getting a Pro, it's the 2020. I don't know that I can justify someone getting a 2021 iPad Pro. I don't.
I remember
And
when
the
the
facts speak
Pro,
for themselves. They are not selling well. And there's a
yeah,
reason. Apple is limiting it way more.
It's because, besides the main features, there's nothing really that separates it as a pro device.
No,
You
it
you
doesn't.
get a better screen. You get
Oh, yeah, the
two
mini
more
LED is
speakers.
amazing. I love the mini LED the display because it's just a bunch of mini tiny little LED lights behind a giant thing. I don't remember how to describe it, but it's nice. The color support is amazing. Um, so now, gentlemen, I have to go get a package real quick. Apparently, it's at another building, so I will be right. The fuck, my neighbor literally just texted me and said that they dropped off a package for me 2 buildings over.
yeah. Well, me and Jose will hold the fort.
All right, hold the fort. And you guys continue talking on the topic or pause. I don't know. What do you guys want to do?
I will probably keep talking. I don't know what this guy wants to do, but we'll see.
Because if you keep talking about the topic, I'll log in on the phone, so that I can hear and then not be lost when I get back.
All right, we'll keep talking.
All right, I'll be right back then.
All right.
All right.
So what do you think would justify getting a pro? Because
Well, every
as I
oh
said,
my bad.
those features, giving it more Mac features you know, might justify, getting a pro. If I can't use Mac features on this iPad, maybe
Yeah.
at least the pros, can have those Mac features that everybody wants.
It's like they're distinguishing the pros on the iPhones between the regular phones by giving it extra cameras and all that stuff. And the fact that they're not doing with that with the iPad, it's crazy because when the iPad Pro just came out, it was very distinguished between all of them. It was incredibly fast. It just had everything that the other iPads didn't. And now I think they just got themselves stuck in a box, like you said, because now they added a little too much to the other iPad that it's very confusing to consumers on what they should get.
Well, I got the iPad Mini, and I'm not trying to be biased, but in my opinion, the best price to performance would be the Mini. A lot of people, it's probably not for a lot of people because of the screen size,
Right.
but to me, that's a plus. It's not really a minus. But when it comes down to the hardware, you know, to price, I think that's probably the best because the more expensive you get, you get more features that you're not actually able to use fully. Like I
Yeah.
don't know any iPad that can use the M1 fully yet.
No. I think they're adding it to the Air. No, are they?
Yes, the new Air
Yeah.
has the M1.
Yeah. And that's the thing though is that for me, yeah, I love the Mini. The Mini is honestly really awesome. I saw Lexus and it was actually pretty fucking dope. Um, but if I had to justify somebody getting between two iPads, I would tell them to get either the Air or the Mini. The lower end, somebody that would be a different kind of consumer. But for somebody that's looking for a more, expensive iPad, I would either tell them the Mini or with the Air. The Pro, nah, not really, because I just don't see it as something that your average consumer could possibly want, especially if you want to take it on the go. It's like the Mini, you can just take it anywhere, man. Like if you have shorts and you have big enough pockets in your short, you just slip it in there and it's fine. It's a pretty nice device, and the Air it doesn't fall behind either. Especially now that they're adding the M1 chip. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference, but I guess you're gonna be able to have the M1 on your Air now. So it's like, why get the Pro?
I think the a big issue with the Pro is that it's what, like 12.9, right? The display size.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
It's like it's not that far from a 13-inch MacBook, you know.
Right, right.
So if I want something that's, let's say I want something that's very portable and I wanted to have desktop performance, why not just go for the MacBook?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially since the iPad is barely smaller, but it doesn't have those Mac features, you know, that makes it a Pro.
Yeah,
So
you might as well get a MacBook Air or something like that. You know, like could have all the Mac features and do the same thing as a Pro. You know, because the MacBook Air now actually has the M1 now in it too. So it's like, why not
and
get the MacBook Air?
and you're not even saving that much space if you were to switch to a MacBook, or not if you were to switch from a MacBook to the iPad Pro, you're not saving that much space. You're saving
No.
like what, like an inch,
Yeah,
not even an inch, like point one of an inch.
yeah, pretty much. And like thickness, it's not even going to make a difference because now with these smart folio or whatever they
The
call it,
smart
so
keyboard, yeah, it's
yeah, it's still makes it thick as a MacBook Air. So I mean, in my eyes, I would probably just get a MacBook Air instead of an iPad Pro. You know, it's more reasonable to do than the than just getting a Mac iPad Pro. You know that you're going to be limited to the iPad OS uh, features.
and I do have a real world example about that. Some of those limitations because you know, I'm doing summer school this semester for, you know, and I'm not going to say the publisher name, but one of the publisher's websites, in which I do my homework in, um, for both the phone and the iPad, it was telling me that the website was, what was it? It was telling me that the website supported. So it, you know, it said it differently for like for the iPad. It said it supports iPad OS or whatever, but it said for the new browser, so update your browser settings. You know, on
Hmm.
so that's clearly meant for you know, Mac OS. You know, because I'm pretty sure they have the newer browser version.
Right, right.
So
I,
I'm like, um, you know, my iPad can handle that website, no problem. It has enough, you know, processing power to handle that website, which is not really. It doesn't seem like it's that performance intensive. You know, it's just answering a few questions here and there,
Right.
watching a video, and it does give me the option to use it anyways. And even like that, it doesn't have any issues doing it. So you know, that's another thing that it's like if I had, you know, a MacBook, I wouldn't have to deal with that issue of maybe it's a little less accessible on the iPad.
Yeah. I think since you have an iPad and it's even though it's iPad OS, it still acts like it doesn't give you a full desktop website kind of type deal like you would on a Mac. So the website is different and it's going to react different. It's going to be very restrictive because it's a mobile device. According to the website, it's still being considered a mobile device, you know, compared to a computer
Yeah, exactly.
or, you know, it's going to recognize that it's a computer. It's not a, you know, mobile device. So that's, you know, the website is definitely going to change. You're going to have more options on a computer than you perhaps would on the iPad. You
But
know, it'll be
I think
go
my
for it.
point was that the iPad, it probably beats out, you know, a couple-year old MacBooks, you know, in
Oh,
terms of
definitely.
processing power. And I
it
bet you,
does. It
and I
does,
bet
and
you,
look at the chip too.
and I bet you those MacBooks, they have no issue with that website, you know.
No, exactly. And that's the thing. And I know you guys were saying because I got I came back. I'm out of breath. But you guys were saying how they might make the Air M1. Oh, are you gonna make the iPad Pro M2? I right, and then you're talking about, well, I can use a MacBook, I can use an iPad, and maybe the iPad's a little more snappier and snippier or whatever. But guess what? My 2017 MacBook can do the same thing your freaking iPad Pro M1 can do, and probably faster too, because there's no difference from the Air to the M1 Pro except for maybe hardware. And that's where Apple's making a mistake, where people are saying, why would I have an iPad mini? Like, let's say Jose was saying it, I don't see why I should go up to an Air. Unless I'm looking for features that the Air has. I want a bigger display. I want to use the Magic Keyboard with it. I want to do that. Okay, fine. But it still makes no sense why someone would go to an M1 Pro, M1. They're probably going to do that. Probably M1 or M2 iPad Pro, especially when you limit its features and it does the same exact thing that Jose's iPad mini will do. And like I said, they're still going to need a MacBook. There are just certain things that laptops can do that iPads can't. And I wish Apple would give it that power, because there are people who say, do I really want to carry around a laptop? Well, if you're carrying around an iPad Pro, even an 11-inch, you're carrying around a laptop. Attach a keyboard case to it, and it's 3 pounds heavier. It
Exactly.
is crazy how heavy this iPad is. I was lifting it the other day going, oh my God. However, people are still going to go for a MacBook. They're not going to outsell. The iPads are not going to outsell the MacBooks. MacBooks offer different power. Pros are going to need different power. And they already say on their website, it's perfect for students. Take an iPad to school. I had a classmate that she was like, I see a lot of people writing with their Apple Pencil. And she was in a social media class for journalism, and the professor didn't want them using technology. The irony of that made us both laugh hell about it. It was crazy funny. However, she was like, it looks like they're just writing, and I kind of want that. But I didn't want to get a computer, because why do I want a computer? I can just get an iPad. For those that need a MacBook like me, it'll definitely go up. And some websites and apps and other developers, they'll make great apps for your iPad. However, they'll tell you, hey, you can get better features on a Mac if you get it. So it makes no sense for Apple to limit their software, to software lock their products, and to also make an M1 chip, M1 iPad Pro with no Mac OS features, including battery health retention.
And sometimes it comes to the case where some app developers actually make it an in-app purchase for the iPad, but then you can go on your computer and do the exact same thing for free. On the web, you can just do the same thing, and it don't charge you anything or nothing. So it's kind of make you think like, yeah, I like the iPad, but if I was gonna get a Pro, I might as well just get a MacBook Air. If I really was interested in an iPad Pro, if I wasn't, like you said, if I was an artist or if I didn't need it to write or whatnot, then yeah, I think the MacBook Air would definitely just be a lot better with it than an iPad Pro, because the MacBook Air does have the M1 chip in it. So it's like, why not? Why not get the MacBook?
Now the iPad Pro is portable. You can, and it's really nice, and you can put it in the same computer sleeve. Those little sleeves that they sell, the fabrics for the MacBooks. You can put your iPad in it, and it's still good. And you can do sidecar, and you can hook it up to another monitor. I just think that Apple ruined the iPad experience. And I don't use my iPads to create my thumbnails anymore. I use my iPhone. I send it to my iMac, and it's over. No more. I don't have to do anything else.
The crazy thing is how crazy fast and efficient they made these smartphones as well. It's incredible, because they're like little computers in our pockets, man. Literally, bro. It's like they're just computers in our pockets, full legit computers.
It's scary too. And it's crazy how the government has powers over our phones. Like they can use a X. I think it was called an X code, or I forget what Edward Snowden called it. But they can remote into your phone anytime you want, even if it's locked, even if you have passwords, even if what. And it's scary. And it's crazy how susceptible we are now to security risks. But now it looks like we're going to be switching from phones to wearables, VR, AR, all of that, like VR headsets and glasses and watches, and even your clothes and your toothpaste and all that's going to have 5G, which is crazy as hell. But China had its lowest shipping percentages in 2020 or 2021, at the time when people were buying more online of phones.
So I guess we're getting into conspiracy theories now, guys.
Yeah, I know. What's the next
No,
topic
but
then?
I'm just saying that it's. But I'm saying that,
What's the next real
I'm
topic?
just saying. I mean, it's we're gonna stop. Smartphones are gonna be like, whatever. I can just take my watch. I can just take my glasses. I can. By the way, are you guys excited? Real quick, are you guys excited for the Apple VR glasses?
No, I have
Not
no use for
really.
them.
I don't understand the benefit. What? I don't understand what these are.
They're mainly for gamers. For when you want to play mobile gaming. They basically put you in the environment that you are in, and everything looks very real. Like if you were looking out of them, you were
But they're talking
basically
about it like
placed.
you can use it outside of gaming now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
supposed to do
can.
like map directions, I think, right?
Yeah. Supposed to do like map directions. If you go to a store, it kind of shows you how it would look on you. And if you go to a house, you can basically place it to where how your furniture would look in there and all kinds of shit like that. It's just crazy, man. That I could do.
And yeah, and you can
Uh,
get notifications on your glasses, and it's connected to
I
your
mean, yeah, I mean that's how the Google Glass was back in 2000, what, 14, 13
15, and
around
all the way
there.
to like 2017 or 2018.
But
I
that's the
just don't
thing,
see the
though.
point. But again, they're entering into a market where it's very popular. So hey,
But
can you
that
imagine voiceover on your glasses?
the thing with that is it's kind of funny because Google came out with Google Glass at the time,
They got
and
rid of it.
they got rid of it because consumers weren't ready. They just weren't ready for it
You know,
Well,
it's
because
funny because I think Google came too early to that, and
yep,
I think Apple's coming too late to that.
yep.
I don't know that they're coming too late. I think they're
There,
coming
there,
right in the middle.
there's already a few of them, and I think like because from what I heard, it's getting delayed again, right? They haven't even mentioned them yet.
They it rumors are saying that this is what they're going to look like and this and that. It could be coming, but this is like the cat and mouse game they played with AirTags all the way back in like 2017, no, 2018, 2019. AirTags 2020, nope. October 2020, nope. 2021, okay, yes. So one of the problems is like the Microsoft VR glasses, the headsets. They're huge, they're bulky, and they're also $3,200. So I think what Apple can do right now, if they did come out with this, is what Apple is all about. We want thinness, we want no bulkiness, no this, no, and they are a very good company
Simplicity.
for that. If you touch an Apple product, you know it's an Apple product. You don't have to. Is it a Microsoft? And they can. The Apple, for some reason or another, tends to set the standard a lot. Look at the phones with the no charging brick. How many ads did Android and did Samsung and all these guys make? Look at Apple not shipping bricks.
Well,
We're not going to ship
actually,
bricks
it
either.
it started with the headphone jack. Actually,
We did,
that's
and
what
they
it
made fun
started
of them.
with.
And they're like,
Yeah.
well, why would you get rid of that? And all of a sudden,
A couple of years later, Samsung did it, and it's kind of funny because as soon as they did it, they deleted that slogan that they had on their website because it was like people were giving shit about it, and like they even created memes and shit about it. But I mean, honestly, even another thing that was actually came out, and I think it could have became really popular, but they sucked at fucking marketing. It's the spectacles from Snapchat.
oh
Those
yeah.
could have really caught on, but the marketing Snapchat did was just not there. So
No, exactly. But if you look at Apple, if they come out with a pair of glasses, and the cheapest pair right now you can get are 1,200, 1,200, and Apple says screw it, you can get them for the like 300 to 500, just like an Apple Watch. They're now going to set the standard of pricing. And they're going to say, well, look, these look great. They feel great. They're not heavy like yours. They're this, they're that. The connectivity is great. And then companies are going to have to
Well,
compete.
I
Because
think the
VR is
issue
like
with
that
I
right
think
now.
the issue with
It's
that is that
bulky, it's
sorry, go
pricey.
ahead.
I was just saying it's bulky, it's pricey. It's just no. And people are when if Apple does do this, they could possibly set the market.
Can I say something about them setting the standards for stuff?
Sure.
Um, it's kind of crazy to me because I don't know if you guys remember, but before the iPhone 10 came out, phones were not in the thousands. They got up to 800, 700, and stuff like that. But as
Yeah.
soon as the iPhone 10 came out, it was at 1,000 something. And of course, it was Apple, so consumers went to go fucking buy them like they always do. And after that, every other phone manufacturer was all like, "Oh, consumers are okay with paying thousands. Well, we can do that too." So now every flagship phone that you see is now 1,600, 1,500, and it's it was all because of Apple, and at the same time, the consumers that the prices have been raised on these phones, and of course, Apple did set the standards for that.
I wanted to say something real quick about the virtual glasses. I feel like Apple is. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that
Yeah.
car.
Sounds like a good engine.
But anyways, those. I think Apple is trying to get into a market that they have failed to get into before with these VR glasses because they're trying to get in the gaming market, right? Where they had to compete with other, technology companies that focus on gaming. I believe, I'm not too sure, but I believe Sony also has some VR glasses.
Yeah.
Sorry
So,
about that.
so it's we all know that Apple's products like their MacBooks are good. They've increased their graphics performance or whatever. But their problem is that these developers don't make games for them. They're not, all the games are on the Windows side of things, and it's I'm pretty sure these MacBooks could handle those games, but they're not compatible. And I think that's Apple's issue, that they can't get into that gaming market. They're having issues with that, and I don't know if that's what these VR glasses are trying to do. But I don't know if that is what the case. Apple just doesn't have good games, I don't think.
Well, it's also the developers, but there's a lot of testing. Jesus, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but a lot of people have tested games on iMac, on MacBooks, and all that. And the MacBooks, as well as they are made and as pretty good as the power is in the M1 and the M1 Pros are, and the M1 Max, they can't keep up with the games. The screen starts to get grainy, it
Yeah.
starts to get laggy, and sure, you could say that's a developer thing. I think that's more an Apple thing, and they do have a problem. Like you have Android, they don't have a thing like FaceTime. They have this Hangout thingy they call it. It's not even popular with Android users, and so every company has their issue. Apple with gaming has the issue where iPad. Oh yeah, there's games for iPads every day, and the iPads are made for games. A lot of it, they are. But and that's not the only thing they're made for. But I'm just saying they are. The MacBooks aren't, and I think what Apple understands is it's going to take us forever because they're trying to get the Apple TV into gaming too. I don't know who would can use an iPad, Apple TV for gaming. I'm serious. Someone in the comments correct me if I'm wrong because I probably am. But they probably understand that they're not great on the gaming market. So they're probably saying we also need to tie this to our Apple ecosystem. A, so people will buy them, and B, so that when they notice they suck at gaming, hey, there's other cool features.
Yeah, but as you said, the cheapest one's 1,200 right now. I don't know if that's actually the cheapest one, but if we say
It's
that
somewhere, yeah.
if we say that Apple prices their things at that price range as well, I don't know that many people that would buy it just to use maps.
Well, and but they're saying that you can do like most of what you can on your iPhone with your glasses because, and I read this on Bloomberg's reported it, Wall Street Journal's reported on, everyone's reporting on this, that people are starting to kind of ditch the phones and go, why can't I wear something and use it? So
be
I
right
think
back.
Apple's thinking, hey, why don't I let you do everything you can do on a phone with a really cool feature in VR and do AR and the machine learning and all of that on these glasses? And that's where I think Apple has an edge because, like Jesus said, they set a phone at $1,000 and everyone went, Apple, you're so crazy. Oh, consumers are buying it. I think Apple could set the standard here and go 500. And now Microsoft and Google and Sony and all these other guys and developers are going to go, holy crap, we now have to make a, even if they keep their $1,200 products, now they kind of have to change the design a little bit to be less bulky. If they don't do that, they're going to have to change the pricing a little bit, maybe create a $700 minimum, a $600 minimum, just to get competitive with Apple. That's the biggest thing there. Now, do you guys think if Apple didn't set the standard with the $1,000 phone and maybe the watch and all that, do you think if, like, let's say Samsung came out and their new phone came out before the iPhone 10 did, and it was set at 1,000, do you think people would be scrambling as fast to do it, or is it because it's Apple that they're, oh yay, and then, do you think it would have the same ripple effect across the tech industry like Apple does whenever they set a standard?
No, it wouldn't. I think people would actually be outraged about $1,000 price point on a Samsung. I think a lot of the things that Apple do, a lot of people just let fly, and since it's Apple, because there's a lot of fanboys out there, a lot of Apple fanboys, and that unfortunately they don't even know too much about the product. They don't know what it comes with. They don't know much about the software. They don't know anything about the hardware. But the fact that it has that Apple symbol on it, it's what's making them go to it. And unfortunately, I think that's a lot of the consumers that actually buy iPhones.
And it's a smart marketing brand, brand.
I kind of have to disagree with you guys on that.
Okay.
Because I feel like companies always try to find an excuse to make more money. So I feel like if Samsung made their phone $1,000, I'm pretty sure Apple would try to make their phones $1,000 because someone did it. Someone already did it. So normally the first person to do it gets all the like negative views or whatever, and then everybody's just free to do it as well.
The question is, why doesn't anybody do anything? Why does nobody make a move until Apple does? Why does everybody stay in the same hole until Apple moves and then they move?
Well, it's like this. Androids had 5G first, right? And then Apple got 5G. It's not that Apple does things always first.
98% of the time they do. And but the thing is that a lot of these companies, they release a product like this and then they come out horrible. Look at the watch. They found out, Apple's coming out with a watch. Samsung comes out with the watch and it crashes and burns because it's horrible. It was slow. It was laggy. It was plasticky, most like their others. And guess what? Apple came out with the watch and blew them out of the water, even though if you looked at the Series 0 Apple Watch, it was horrific. It was awful. One of the worst watches I've ever seen. The processor was incredibly slow. It was laggy. It wasn't responsive. It was the same as them. But what me and Jesus are talking about, Jose, is, okay, you're right. One company does it, another company is going to do it. But it seems like if Apple says, this new iPhone's worth $1,500, Apple does it, it's like, yay! It's the consumers, the customers, that, okay, fine, Samsung did it first, but the customers aren't going to clamor for those Samsung phones like they will for an iPhone, like they will for an Apple product.
No, I'm not saying they will. What I'm saying is if one company does it, it gives all the other companies to do it as well. I think
what if Samsung has to take it back because, nobody really bought our phones, but the minute Apple does it, everyone's buying it in their mama. And that's why these companies, they don't just go by what the company does.
Yeah,
it's
but
not like that. They go by what the market does.
The thing is, if Samsung did it and it sold relatively well, it would give everybody an excuse to do it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's because it's Apple. I'm saying because Apple did it and it was successful. If the iPhone 10 crashed and burned, I don't think we would see prices that high, even if it was just Apple who did it. So I'm not saying it's the reason that it was Apple who did it first. I think it was Apple who did it first and succeeded.
I mean, it's also with the
so if Samsung did it first, so if Samsung did it first and succeeded, then I think we would see the same thing where everybody else is.
Now the question is, do you guys see it as it would be successful if Samsung did it, or do you guys think it wouldn't be as successful?
I think
Mm,
companies would eventually go through with it anyway. However, I don't think it would be as successful because Apple prides itself on the customer. Samsung, they act like they do. And the thing is you need people fanatics like Jesus said. That I mean, I can't tell you how many times people will just bring out an iPhone because it's an iPhone. People just love Apple for some reason. And that's what Apple wanted all along. Steve Jobs made that happen because it's like, oh, you have a nice Apple product and it has an Apple sticker, or you have this and it's Apple and it's this and it's just this crazy symbol. And they're getting into the identity politics and all kinds of crap like that.
yeah, well, I
And
don't
and so
disagree.
I just think that Apple, I think the other companies would be successful, sure, but I don't think it would be at the level that when Apple does it, then it's successful.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that Apple has done great with their branding and marketing. I think the only thing I'm saying is, if a company does something and it's successful at doing it, other companies will follow. Doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't matter what company it is. Like let's take just the technology out of it. If some company did something in a different market and it was successful, other companies would do the same.
Um, it's kind of funny because when Apple removed the headphone jack, everybody was so outraged and all that
Yep.
stuff. But at the same time, as far as they were outraged and all that stuff, it only took about what I would say 6 months for this to calm down, and then people started getting AirPods, and then AirPods became these popular status symbol kind of headphones, kind of earbuds that you had in your ear. That if you had AirPods in your ear, you were just, I guess you could say, you were dope. You were cool as shit. You were like the top motherfucker because you had AirPods. You didn't have any headphones anymore. You didn't have no cables hanging down. Like if you had headphones on your under your shirt or wherever you had them, like they would look at you like, what's wrong with you? Even though it was just 6 months ago where it was okay to just have headphones on you, that people didn't look at you like that. Yeah, there was Bluetooth headsets before that, which I was using Bluetooth headset before they even removed the headphone jack. But most people would just use regular earpods or skull candy, the little, $10 skull candy that you can just get anywhere at Target, and now you see somebody like that, like, what the fuck, did you go back to the 80s or what? So I think it became a status symbol after, because Apple has always been a status symbol.
Yeah.
Always has been, before when Apple just started, anybody who had an iPhone, it was a status symbol that you were well off.
Mm-hmm.
You were pretty stable economically, you were rich. I wouldn't say rich, but you were pretty well off.
Mm-hmm.
So and now I think that status symbol that people used to see Apple as, even though it's no longer that because everybody and their mom has iPhones now, it still continues to be one of those big
It's that
things that
cool
it's
factor.
it's that it's that kind of like secretive club that Steve Jobs gave to people. Like, you have an iPhone, you're cool, you can do this with an iPhone. It's so amazing that to this day people are still um, viewing it as, even though it's not anymore.
Well, and remember that commercial 1984, 1985, five something like that. Think different. You're the what did he call it? The misfits and all of that because we're thinking if we are different, we're being different. And I mean, look at 1976 when computers were computers. You weren't a average consumer with a computer. You were a nerd. You were a tech engineer, or you were some kind of guy like that. Apple, I think, had Apple not come about, we would not have that would still be the thing today because computers were a giant as a damn motherfucker to use, and they were as big as a room. And then, even though you had the smaller ones, the way Apple engineered its computers was way different, and that's why companies started competing more and more. I think they do improve competition a lot. Maybe not these days, but they made it cool for a mom to have a computer, for a dad going to the office to have a computer, for a kid using a computer from you know what I mean? Whereas before it was like, "Are you a nerd? Oh, how do you? Oh, you're an engineer." And Apple did do that. where it was like you can use a computer and you don't have to be a nerd, you don't have to be a tech guy, you can be a mom of 3, a mom of 2, you can be a dad just working, you could be just an average kid. And I think that's what the computer world needed at the time, and that's what Apple kind of continues to do to this day. You're cool if you have Apple. And I think with Samsung and I mean, Google is kind of the same way too. People like Google even though they're in bed with the Pentagon and all of that. But Google can kind of get away with it where Samsung can't. Oh, damn, you have a Pixel. Oh, wow. And I mean, there you are. So now Jesus, I heard you have to go.
Yes, I do have to go. I have to attend some business. I'm a
Busy.
very
You're gonna
busy
be rich,
man,
huh?
so
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give a round of applause in your homes and your cars and all that to Jesus. Thanks for coming on the podcast and for informing us and giving us your take.
yeah, for sure, man. I really enjoy doing these tech podcasts. Sometimes, I make up what I can, and like they say, fake it till you make it, bro.
Make it till you make it
So
and shake it.
shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, Jesus.
All right, then, for sure. Well,
Later.
you guys take care, for sure.
All right.
Signing off.
All right. I love how his name was Vapor Savage.
Oh, I know.
I knew he was gonna do that. And yours is just Jose. His is Vapor Savage.
It's weird though, because on my screen it showed up as Jesus.
Did it?
Yeah, right there where it says like the participants inside the stream.
Yeah, because I was on the phone. It said Vapor Savage too.
That's interesting.
So we just had to let Jesus go. But let's talk about Apple and the Mac. It's the last topic. I mean, so let's take everybody on a trip on a favorite rocket ship. So Apple releases this new, awesome, amazing thing. They're ditching Intel. Remember when they went to PowerPCs, then they left PowerPC and they went to Intel from 2005 and on. So it was a relationship of over 21 or over 20 years. So a relationship of over 20 years. And there you go, right? And you're thinking, oh man, they're going to leave them like that. They disrupted the industry. With the M1, it was like, whoa, that's crazy fast. And it has great thermal performance. It's great on battery life. The chip is incredibly fast. I have an M1 iMac, and man, is it amazing. Then they released the M2, M1 Pros and M1 Max chips. And one of my friends bought an M1 Pro MacBook, and he outscores mine like 2-1, sometimes 5-1. And I was thinking, man, they did some incredible stuff. They did some incredible work. Now, there was a problem where the M1 Max chip on a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which is because they released the 13, the 14, the 16, the M1 Max chip did not overheat and use more power on the 14-inch MacBook Pro. However, it would overheat and use more power. Really, not the overheating, but it would use way more power on the 16-inch than on the 14-inch, which made no sense because you went to a bigger computer. So obviously, it shouldn't do that. And then we get to this year. Apple releases the M1 or the M1 Ultra the chip, and it's the final one before M2. And they released this thing called a Mac Studio, and the Mac Studio was set to be 2 times faster on CPU performance and GPU performance, in photo rendering, on Geekbench tests, on Cinema, on you name it, it was going to be that much faster. And they put the 2 chips together. They did a bind model because they do bind where you could do 14 or 16 core GPUs and all of that. They give you 20 core CPUs, and you can go 64 gigs or 128 gigs of RAM, which was crazy, never been done before. And then, you could do 24 cores or 32 cores or 48 cores or 64 core GPU. And 128 gigs of RAM, 64 core GPU. You're thinking, oh, 2 times faster, great. And then come the tests, and then come the 6 months of people testing these things, and it's not what it's made out to be. Jose, why don't you help expand on that?
Yeah, so first of all, I do agree with Apple leaving Intel because Intel has this problem where they tend to delay a lot of things. So, they'll say that the new chip is coming out next year, then it gets delayed to the year after that. So, I think that was a good move on Apple's part. Plus, they get to use their own processor, saves money or whatever, and now, they're the owners of that, and they could tailor their software to that. So the M1 was a good chip, you know, but then there's those issues that you were saying, and from what I seen, it was mainly a software issue. So the software was the one that was basically not letting the M1 Ultra reach, the 2 times potential that it had. Because it's supposed to scale linearly, so if it has twice as many cores, it should have twice as much power or performance. And it didn't. And I think they did fix that eventually on the Ultra. But I have been doing some research in terms of those chips recently. And I did see that the new Intel 12th generation, it beats out the M1 in most things. So I guess the best way to say it is that the i5 version of the new chip is as good, if not better, than the regular M1. The i7 is as good, if not better, than the M2 that just recently released, and in some parts better than the M1 Pros. And something that I did notice with the M1 Ultra chip and the i9 version of the 12th Intel chip was that Apple was really proud that it beat out this, brand new chip, because it had twice as many cores and, it was getting insane scores on these.
The Geekbench, the Cinebench, and
Well, that's the thing is that the chart they showed when they released the M1 Ultra, how they put, oh,
yeah.
look, it scored 24 and the Intel chip scored 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is that's the only thing that this Ultra beat the Intel chip in. It didn't beat it in Cinebench. In Cinebench, it got 24,000,
Yep.
and the Intel chip scored 27,000.
Yep.
So I find that interesting that Apple, the score they chose to show everybody was the only one that they beat the Intel chip in. And the thing is that the Intel chip was, last year, I guess last year, it was released last year. So, this year, some computers barely started getting it. So the interesting thing is that the Intel chip, it beats out the M1 and even the M2 that recently came out. And that's not even like the newest version because Intel is supposed to release their new CPU in October, if the rumors are to be believed. But as I said, they've been known to move things back. But that's not even it. There's AMD as well, who's releasing their new chip in September, which is supposed to compete with Intel's new chip. Not even the 12th generation, but it's supposed to compete with the 13th generation. And, the 12th generation is already better than the M1 and M2 chips. And so I'm not going to say that the M1 chips are bad. They're good. They're really good chips. But to say that they're better or, they're more powerful than everything out there in the market today is just a lie. I don't know, for every version of the M1 chip or M2 chip, there is a PC that can beat it.
Yeah, and on that too, I mean it. You just think about this, and um, Apple showed that, oh my god, it's 2.5, or I think 2.2 times faster, and 2.3, and it's 24,000, and 200 this and this, and oddly enough, that's the only way it beats it. And the Mac Studio, which is the only computer you can get an M1 Ultra chip, it's plugged in, so you don't need to worry about battery. However, I can plug in a 12th generation i9 Ryzen. You know what the Ryzens are, right? You know,
Hmm.
computer like the Dell, the new one that's like $5,000. I can plug it into its battery charger, to its charger, and it'll beat Apple when it's plugged in. However, Apple beats it when it's without the power charger. And you're right. A lot of laptops are beating Apple's M1, M1 Ultra, and M1 Max chips, and they're not even trying. Apple might beat it in certain things here and there, but a lot of people are doing all these tests, people that have money that can buy these kinds of computers. And they're saying it that they don't notice the snippiness and the snizziness and the snappiness and the quickness of the M1 Ultra, because they can pull out an M1 Max MacBook Pro and do this and have the same exact speed, exact same snappiness and all of that as the M1 Ultra. And Windows right now, they're doing really well with their chip. However, they still struggle on the thermal performance, the power efficiency, and all of that.
Well,
Um,
it's interesting that you say that because I saw a video where they were testing out the new M2 MacBook Pro,
mhm.
and okay, so the M1 is the speed that it runs at was 3.2 gigahertz, right? Across the board, no matter what, if it was plugged in or not. So you would get that stable performance, with on battery or not. The M2 chip is supposed to be able to go up to 3.5 gigahertz. Um, but the person who was doing the test was only able to get it to 3.3, and it
Mhm.
was thermal throttling. It was getting too hot.
Yeah, it was at
The,
like
the,
what, 101, 102 degrees Celsius?
it hit 105.
105.
Yeah, and then the fans turned on, and the performance went down because that's the thing with all chips is when they get too hot, you have
Mhm.
to cool them down and you lose performance. And that's what the M1 did well, is that it stayed cold, it stayed cool, you know, and you got the same performance no matter what. The M2 chip, I don't know if it's software or something, but it's overheating. I don't know if it's doing that with the M1 or the MacBook Pro, and they have it at the same frequency speed that the if they do that same thing to the M2 MacBook Air, I wouldn't recommend that laptop to anybody because that
Yeah.
thing is gonna thermal throttle like crazy because it doesn't even have a fan, to cool it down.
The M1, the MacBook Air. That's right.
The
And
MacBook
just
Air.
yeah, and iPads don't have a fan either. And which makes sense. It's a tablet. It would be thicker if it had a fan. It'd pretty much be a computer, to pretty much touchscreen computer. Which it is. But like, if you can consider it that. But you're right, and you're thinking, okay, if the M2s are overheating where M1 did perfectly well at, no matter if it got to 100 degrees, 105 degrees Celsius, did it? I think so.
No, that one I
No,
don't think I
they got
don't.
to like 40, 50,
They got to like
I think.
90, I believed, like 90 in the
Something like
90s.
that.
Yeah.
But they stayed cool, as you said. Apple nailed it with the thermal performance with that chip. And not only that, the thermal performance did great, and it still kept up the regular your CPU and GPU performances. However, if the M2 is like this, then what's to say that the M2 Pro, because you know the pattern, it's the pattern they're going to go in. When they release that M2 Pro Mac Mini or maybe an M2 Pro MacBook, how do we know it's not going to overheat just like its predecessor, the M2? Or is Apple just magically going to fix its thermal performance? Where did they go? I wonder where they went wrong, where their M1s were classified as a great chip on thermals because it did well, whereas now it's You'd be lucky if you weren't overheating.
Well, I think the issue might be the speed they're trying to run it at, because everything else like the Intel and AMD chips, they run at 5 gigahertz.
Mm-hmm.
So those things they're going to get hot quick.
Oh yeah.
But those laptops are designed to cool those down efficiently. And I don't know if, because there was a weird reason, because it's supposed to go up to 3.5, but it was only able to go 3.3. So I don't know if Apple knows that there's a thermal issue and doesn't want to let it hit its full speed. But something is, because that's point one, that's an increase of point one, and it's getting that hot. It went from 3.2 to 3.3, and the thermal's just something.
Could it be an industry-wide thing? Because you just said pretty much that Windows, they know their computers get up to 3.5 and it does overheat, but they can kind of cool it down. Even though Windows does cool it down well, it's still really, really, really hot. So could it just be an industry thing that they need to figure out where, look, Apple's making their chips, it could only get to 3.3 and it's still overheated. It was still overheating. Windows, this AMD computer got it to, let's say, 3.5 and it was still overheating. Could it be an industry-wide technical thing they've got to figure out, whether you're Apple, your Microsoft, or your Lenovo?
Well, they should, but
AMD.
my main concern is that Apple is not even close to. So Apple's like, its chip overall is hitting maybe what like Intel's performance cores are hitting. Not their efficiency cores. Their efficiency cores are probably hitting like 3.5 gigahertz, but their performance cores are hitting like 5 gigahertz. So it's a big difference, and I don't think that because it went from 15 watts to 25 watts, I believe. So it's only a 10-watt increase. Mm-hmm. It should not be making that much more heat, But I don't think they were prepared for it, because in that video, they didn't turn the fans on until it hit, that 100 mark.
Yeah.
If they would have turned those fans on when it hit maybe 80 or 90, then I don't think we would see that big of a performance drop when it was, starting to thermal throttle.
So you think maybe had Apple programmed it to where the fans would turn on at 85, maybe 90 degrees Celsius, you'd probably see a stabilization in performance and more cooling?
I think it depends how, because the issue is I don't know why it's getting that hot that quick, So I don't know if it's something with the way they designed the chip or something, but it's getting too hot too fast, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there would still be a performance drop when it hits those temperatures, but I don't think it would have been as big as what it is right now. So right now the performance isn't stable. You're not getting that peak, anything at all times like you were with the M1.
That's right. And I think somewhere something went wrong, because they made the infrastructure already. It's just a step up. It's supposed to be a step up from M1. They made the how do I call it? I don't know what to say. They made the cheat sheet. I guess, right? Like, they made the cheat sheet. Here's how you make these thermals work. Here's how you do this. Now they didn't need to figure it out because they figured it out already with M1. So my thing is, how could they not just take the same things? Yes, it's a different chip and different performance, but it's the same lower level performance of your Macs, your new Macs, than what you were doing before. I just don't understand why they couldn't use the same roadmap, basically. So it could be something wrong with the chip. It could be something wrong with, we're trying to get it to this power. Maybe Apple just shouldn't have bragged that much, because there's no way that the computers they were using for the presentation were made to actually fix where these problems were fixed and there was no overheating and it was all perfect like the M1, and then they released this crap to us. There's no way that was possible. I can't see that. If their computers didn't experience this when they were presenting it, how in the world and they weren't. I don't think they were running the test while they were doing it, right? While they were live, right?
No, I'm pretty sure that was done beforehand to
And they
get the
just
best
copied the chart.
performance out of there.
Yeah. And it's just like there's no way that they made a computer that was better at this and that they didn't have these issues and then they released all these to us. To the consumers. I don't think that's a possibility. And the fact that these chips, look, they're competing and it's great to have competition. I'm all for that. But you can't be Apple and say these chips are the best in the market and they're the best at not overheating and they're the best at this and that. And they're not. And they're not they're not even, they're not what? The Max is 1.5 times faster in the Mac Studio?
Well, the M2, I don't even think hits the M1 Pro's
Nope.
performance. They're like, I think, what you say, 1.5 better than the M1, the base M1.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really better than the M1 Pro. Not from what I saw. I saw that it gets close to the M1 Pro performance, but it's not. The one thing that I did see about the M2 though is that the single core is probably like the best out there right now. But just overall, it's not.
The multi-core performance is not there. It's pretty
Yeah.
friggin'. It's slow compared to
The M1 Pro.
It's slow compared to the M1 Pro, but it's also slow in terms of if you compare it to a Windows. And yes, when they were comparing the M1 Pro to the M1, yes, you did see better thermal performance on the M1 Pro. You saw better single core and multi-core performance. You saw a lot of things with that on a lot of those tests. We're not going to play those videos here because it's just going to take too long. Those videos are 10 to 15 minutes long. Where did Apple go wrong in the Mac Studio, in your opinion? For me, I'll say for me, it's you lied, Apple. Just like they lied and said, oh, it's a 24-inch display. It's a 23.5-inch display. It is a 5K display. The speakers they said were the best in a computer. They're not. They're awesome speakers. I'm not going to say that they're not good speakers. They are some of the best speakers I've ever heard on a desktop. And that's saying a lot. However, they have lied before and they've misskewed the numbers. Here, I mean, why would I buy... First off, the Mac Studio the base model starts off like the M1 Pro MacBook Pro 14-inch base model. 14-core CPU, 10 GPU, I wish. 14-core GPU, 10-core CPU, what is it? I think it's 16 gigs of RAM and it's 16 or 30 and all that. It starts off at $2,000, so does the Mac Studio, and you can put an M1 Pro chip. Okay, it's an M1 Ultra or an M1 Max chip. You cannot put an M1 Pro on it, right?
Yeah.
So my question here is, why would I buy a Mac Studio with an M1 Ultra that does not perform any better than your 12th gen Alder Lake Intel chip? And why would I put a Mac Studio with an M1 Max chip? It's going to have the same power as the MacBook Pro 16-inch with an M1 Max or 14-inch with an M1 Max. So where did Apple go wrong with the Mac Studio?
So I think the main problem was like that Geekbench score that they showed, that it showed that it was beating Intel by, 4,000.
Yeah.
And they know that people are going to get these devices in their hands and they're going to be able to test them out. So I think in Cinebench is where, the Intel scored 27 and the Ultra scored 24. But also what you can do with the Intel chips is you can overclock them and you could get even more performance out of them. So that's just like the base, score that you're going to get. You could always do a couple tweaks here and there to get, 5, 6, 10% more performance out of them. So I think, that's, they set people's expectations high, This thing's going to be the best thing ever. So, and then they had that software glitch where you weren't getting any more performance than M1 Max. You were getting about the same. I do think I saw that they fixed that software issue, so you could get the full performance now.
Mhm.
But I think it's too late. People already saw like the original, you know, performance out of it. And as you said, you know, if you're gonna get the same performance from this studio and the same from a MacBook Pro 14-inch and it's the same price, why not get the laptop that's more portable and it's going to give you the same performance as this desktop, basically. And it's portable and you're going to get the full performance.
No overheating, and you know what you're gonna get. You know what kind of performance you're gonna get. And if you're a person that says, "Look, listen, guys, I'm worried about monitor support," you can buy a $500, even a $250. Well, the $250 monitors are the very cheap ones. You can get a 4950-inch Sony monitor or Samsung monitor actually, and not have to spend on a $1,600 studio display.
Exactly.
And look, the Samsung M8, it's a great display. The webcam's not as good. Actually, the webcam's a little better. The speaker is not better, especially when playing music. Um, I mean, there's a lot of differences there, but exactly. I mean, I think they lied. I don't know how you release that software, that computer, knowing that software. It made absolutely no sense. And yeah, okay, let's say they did improve it. I don't know that. I haven't verified that. You have, I guess. It even if they did, if I would have had a Mac Studio from 3 months ago, guess what? I'm still mad.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I'm
fine.
saying. It's too late. You know, it's too late now that you fixed the issue. That issue should not have been there on launch. You know.
So do you think that now, let's say someone has been saving up their paychecks and they've been working extra hours to get this Mac Studio, and now they heard, oh, that performance jump happened. So now it will give me that performance jump. Do you think that's the attitude people are having, or do you think, no, I don't really want to waste money on this Mac Studio and then have to buy a display with it, because what if they're lying? You know, these YouTubers say that, okay, yeah, the software's fixed, but I don't trust it. Did Apple create that problem?
Well, they did because you know that issue was there on launch. You know, I don't know how long afterwards it took them to
A
fix
long
it,
time.
but it had a few issues from what I recall on launch. You know, and when you're spending that kind of money on a new product, you don't want to have to wait to be able to use it to its full potential. You know, because as we said, what the base model is 2,000, but that's with the M Max. How much is it with the M1 Ultra? You know, is it like a
It's like
thousand more?
I think it was like 2,500 or 3,000, right around there.
Yeah, so you're spending, you know, let's say 3,000 or even 2,500. You're spending 2,500 on this product that is working at half its capacity. You know, you're basically buying half of what you paid for.
Well, yeah, exactly. And even now that they fixed it, it's kind of like that. You know, hey man, I'll lend you 250, but you gotta pay me back. Okay. Hey man, I need a couple hundred. You know, I gotta pay the rent. Nah, you didn't pay me back. Or if you want a better scenario, hey, take my car. It's great on gas. I need to go to California. Okay, yeah, take my car. You can borrow it. And all of a sudden, you spent $350 on gas because that sucker was running out like a Hummer.
Yeah,
And now you're gonna go, why would I borrow your car? And because let's say you're someone that I'll pay you to borrow your car. Why would I borrow your car? I'd rather go borrow Jesus' car instead of Jose's, because Jose told me it does this, or Jesus told me it does that. Now I'm gonna go with Jose because this is better. And exactly, why would I buy an M1 Max chip Mac Studio
yeah,
when I can buy a MacBook and then another display? Because let's say you spend your 2,500, you're gonna pay another $100 and something in tax, plus another $278 in Apple Care, and then let's say I need Final Cut. That's another $300. I'm at like 3,300, maybe 3,500, and then I need to buy a display at 1,600, and then I need to Apple Care that, and then I need to pay its tax. Well, you know, and not only that, you can get the mat stand for another like $500 or whatever. And it's like, why can't I just buy a MacBook and the studio display? Or Why can't I just buy a MacBook and a Samsung monitor?
Well, the thing too is that it's a laptop. It comes with a screen. You don't even need to buy a display if you don't want to. You know,
But
it's like
if you don't want to be leaned over and hunched over, or if because a lot of people they need that screen real estate. You know, a
no,
lot of
well,
people
yeah,
that can see. If you are that person, I can just buy a $2,500 MacBook Pro, and then go buy a $500
yeah. Well,
monitor.
what I'm saying is that the MacBook Pro, it's a full product. It comes
Yep,
with the keyboard, the screen, and the computer, right?
and the trackpad and all that. Yep.
Yeah, in the studio, what you still have to buy a display for it. You
You
know,
got to buy a display or
yeah,
hook it up to one you have at home.
you
You got to
have to
buy the
buy.
keyboard,
Like let's say you don't have any computers. You have to buy a display. You can't.
and then you have to buy the mouse, and then you
You
have to buy the keyboard, and then you
you
have to
can, yeah, you can't just use it like
or a
that out of
trackpad.
the box.
Yep. hmm that's actually that's you're actually talking about the Mac Mini too,
Yes,
right?
but the
But
Mac Mini is like $600.
mm-hmm,
No,
seven
like
hundred.
800, something like that.
No. It's the 600-700 for the base model.
Yeah, it's less than $1,000. You can afford to buy a display for that.
And you could pay 250 for a monitor if you're really not wanting to spend five, six, seven, $800 for a monitor.
Yeah,
So it just makes no sense. And I think Apple ruined the Mac Studio. And it was set to be an amazing product. Lex, the editor of this show, and our friend, your best friend, my little sister, she says, "Oh, I just want it because it looks cool." Right? And that's just fine because a lot of consumers are going to do that. I don't see an average consumer buying a Mac Studio. I don't. I'm sorry.
I
And I
don't
just
either.
think
It's
the
the
problem with this chip, even with its performance, I think from what I saw, it's still being beat by Windows.
I think the price point is too high for your average consumer to buy that. I mean, they can do it, yeah, but
It's
you
too high for the
know,
MacBook too. It is.
it is pretty high. But that's what I'm saying. If you want to buy this, M1 Ultra version, it's going to be 2,500 at least, plus a display that you need to buy if you don't have one. So you're looking at at least $3,000, and I think that price point is just too high for your average consumer to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like this computer.
exactly.
I
And
think
especially if they're hearing, well, it's not going to be as snappy as what you say. And also, I mean, what do you think of them? There's a rumor that they got rid of the 27-inch and 32-inch iMacs. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, I don't like that at all because I was actually thinking I'll save money, I'll trade this iMac in, and I'll buy my 27-inch, which is what I actually need. But if they got rid of it, I don't think that's a good idea because iMacs are extremely popular.
Yeah, and I think people want the larger real estate, right? That's what they were
Yep.
waiting for. They were
hmm
waiting for that 32-inch. So I think it would be a pretty big disappointment if people don't get it, because I guarantee you when that comes out, if it comes out, that one would sell for sure.
Oh, that would sell like hotcakes. Look at the iMac; it freaking sold. The state was willing to buy me an iMac over a MacBook Pro because they were worried about size. See, size matters, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, exactly. And I mean, if you can offer me a chip, an M1 Pro or an M2 Pro iMac, fast as hell, and I get the screen real estate of 27 to 32 inches, I'm sold. I'm paying you $3,000 if that's what it comes to. I hope they didn't get rid of the iMac. If they did, it would absolutely be a serious disappointment. It would. 23.5 inches. If I had money, I would hook this up to a monitor. I'm not going to lie to you. Um, now, what is your take? Let's talk about Windows and Microsoft, Intel, Qualcomm, all these guys, AMD, Samsung, all these guys are now going ARM. They're now going to do ARM processors. Do you think Apple with their M1s, because their M1 Pros, M1 Max, they absolutely killed it with those. I had some issues with the M1 Max, but until they got to M1 Ultras and M2 Pros, they murdered it. They killed it, and then they ruined it for me. So with the Ultras and M2 Pros or M2s, so do you think that they shook up the industry, and if so, did they do it for the better?
Well, they certainly did with their M1, because that was the best chip out there for a while.
Yeah.
And as I said, recently it's Intel that was able to like finally beat them with their new chips. But Intel for a while had been, kind of lagging behind everybody else. So I feel like this M1 brought competition, to everybody. It made them want, you know, to make performance because before Intel chips were getting, 13% increases over year, and this new chip was like more than 2 times, an increase because they wanted to compete with the M1 chip, which, clearly they did because it beats out the M1 in most. It beats it out depending on the price range, right? Like the i5 is cheaper, so it'll handle the M1. The i7's a little more expensive, so it can handle the M1 Pro. The i9 is an expensive chip, so it's gonna be able to handle the M1 Ultra. So they were able to do that, but it was because M1 was such a big disruptor, because everybody was kind of just getting by, on 13% increase over generation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, Microsoft is now ditching Intel and all of them, and they ain't gonna work with them. They're gonna do their own thing, and I think that's good for competition. I think they kind of scared Microsoft in going. They improved in thermals, they improved in efficiency, they improved in power, and they improved in speed and craziness. We need to do that with our Surfaces and our Surface Pros and our other laptops that we sell and our tablets. So they poached Apple engineers, and now Apple is actually suing Qualcomm, Intel, and Microsoft. I think it's just Qualcomm and Intel and a few others, AMD, because they poached engineers. They took engineers from them. So let's ask you this question first. Do you think that Microsoft and AMD and all these other guys going without Intel, is that going to are they going to be able to catch up to Apple that way?
Well, as I said,
Their own chips.
oh, sorry, say that again.
No, I'm saying with their own chips, without Intel doing their own, are they going to be able to catch up to Apple and beat Apple, or at least be as equals?
Well, AMD is actually the one who was beating Intel for the longest time because Intel had kind of like, as I said, they've had those issues where they basically, moved everything back. They delayed things because of certain issues. So AMD was basically beating them for the past, few years. It was just recently with this M1 that I think Intel got, basically their heads out of their asses to, you know, to kind of compete because they weren't competing before. They were losing market share. But the new AMD chip, I think it's the Ryzen 7000 series, if I'm not mistaken.
Something
It's
like
supposed to release in September, and that one's supposed to be able to compete with Intel's next generation chips, which is their 13th generation chips.
hmm
So, it's supposed to be as good as their 12th generation plus that 15% increase, So, if the Intels right now can beat, M1 and M2, then AMD for sure would be able to beat, M1 and M2. As for the other companies, I think I had to see what their performance is first because I can't really judge them because, they're not really known for making computer chips, at least not Microsoft.
Well, that's true. Exactly. They never made their own processors, and so Dell, Lenovo, Microsoft, all these guys are going. They're hey, we gotta do. We have to jump ship, and it's. I wonder what it's gonna be like. But do you think they might be able to beat Apple or compete with Apple or be equals because they now all have Apple engineers? Do you think a few engineers here and there are gonna really do it? Because I don't think it's a few engineers. I think it's Apple as a whole. It's all of its engineers, its designers, its marketing, it's all of that together makes these chips what they are. Do you think by them just taking handfuls of engineers that they can just upset Apple?
I think the important thing to that would be if they put enough resources into it, because it's not enough just to have the engineers. You need to put the funding into that so they can create, you know, better, more efficient, more powerful chips.
Yeah, and that's where I know what these companies are doing because they don't know what Apple did to make those chips go. These guys do. What do you think of Apple suing these guys for taking their engineers? Do they? I wonder. I'm not going to ask you a lawyer question, but do you think they have a leg to stand on in court?
Um, so the only thing I can think of that they would be able to sue them for is if those engineers had like do not like don't compete clauses in their contracts.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of because from what I know, it's not illegal to quit your job and join a different company. Unless you have that do not compete
Yeah,
clause
the
in your
NDA,
contract.
or you're told, hey, you can't release our secrets
Yeah,
because there's a fine line where, hey, I did leave your company, but you still can't. You might have left Apple headquarters, but you cannot just give away our secrets.
yeah, but I don't. Just because you get someone from a company, that doesn't mean you're going to use their secrets. You're going to use their skills, their expertise. Their ingenuity. It's not like you need those Apple secrets to make a good chip. You need the person who came up with that design, to make you a different design.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just think Apple. I'm scared for. I just don't like that Macs got more expensive now. Where a MacBook Air is now like $1,000, 1,100, and these other ones are 1,200. So you're basically buying an iPhone 12 Pro, and it just makes absolutely no sense to me. Um, that it got that expensive. Um, so I mean, do you think that whether they release a new Mac Mini, I've heard an M1X or an M1 Pro Mac Mini, an M1 Max Mac Mini, an M2 Mac Mini. Do you think that future armed processor computers of Apple are they gonna have those problems? The overheating at 105 degrees Celsius, or the lack of performance, or the lag, or all that we're seeing here. Or do you think Apple has learned its lesson and went, okay, well, on launch, it's if we say it's 2.5 times faster this year, well, it's 2.5 times faster. I mean,
Well, I don't think it should be an issue if they're able to get those thermals under control. Because, as I said, it seems like it's a good chip. It's
mhm.
starting at, what was it, 1.5 times better than the M1. You know,
Something like
so
that,
the
yeah.
so the M1 Pro, the M2 Pro, should be better than the M1 Pro as well. I don't know. I'm not going to guess how much better. And then if they make an M2 Ultra, then that's going to be even better. But they're going to need to figure out how to get those thermals under control because they haven't had to worry about thermals, because the M1 was so efficient that
Yeah.
you could put it in a laptop with no fan and it wouldn't overheat. You would get the same performance. And if these M2 chips have that issue, you're not going to be able to do that without either cutting the frequency that you're letting that chip perform at, cutting it back down to 3.2 and locking it there. And at that point, I don't know how much performance gain you're actually getting.
Yeah, because I mean, if you lower it, and that's the thing is, okay, you fix the heating because you can fix that it won't overheat, but then still the snappiness and all of that with the power, that might not actually be true still. And I think Apple just needs to be careful here. Because what they don't want is they release the M2 Pro and the M2 Ultra, and Intel and AMD and Microsoft and all these guys are still beating them. And that's going to be a problem if that is the case.
Yeah, as I said, the M2 chip is good for competition. It makes everybody else better. Just like the 12th gen Intel chips made AMD, and make their chips better. So I think it's good for competition because Apple has been known for their cool chips. They're nice, efficient. You get all this extra battery life, which is still true with the M2, but now the performance is up and down because it thermal throttles. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so they need to figure out what they're gonna do. If that means putting, a better fan, two fans, some of these Intel chips, they use liquid metal cooling because they get so hot because they run
Yeah.
at 5 gigahertz. So if Apple does something like that, where maybe they put a MacBook Air M2, but they put a different cooling system that's still fanless, that could work. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they need to make them competitive because if all these Apple computers get too expensive, they're not going to be competitive on the market anymore. Especially if I can get an i5 processor computer that's $200 cheaper than a MacBook Air.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also, and they put more ports. They put more ports on the MacBook Air. They literally copied the same design language of the M1 MacBook Pro, and they essentially, you can get more power on the MacBook Air than you can on the MacBook Pro, which is so funny that they made that a cheaper computer having all that. And then on the M1 Pros, on those MacBooks, they put the SD card, they put the HDMI, but they didn't put HDMI 2.1. They put 2.0. They put two, I think, what is it, two USB-Cs or four, but they didn't put a USB in there. So you still have to have an adapter.
Yeah, so I think, with the M1s, the M1 Air was probably a better buy than the M1 Pro, just because, as you said, the performance wasn't that big of a difference and you got, more features. I think in this generation, the M2 Pro might
It's the
be.
same thing.
No, I think the M2 Pro might be a better buy than the M1 and then the M2 Air if it thermal throttles, because it has no way to cool itself. So you're going to get that better performance from the M2 Pro than the
Sure,
M2
but more
Air.
features and more ports and all of that in the M1 and the M2 Air.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking performance-wise.
Oh, sure.
If that's what you care about, if you want more performance, the M2 Pro is going to be better because most likely it's going to have better performance.
But don't render too much because obviously it's going to overheat now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect sell. Perfect. So obviously there's a lot to talk about with Apple. There's a lot to talk about with the Macs, the iPhones, the iPads, and all of that. And Apple has been disappointing lately. So they just have to fix all of that. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. This is in multiple clips for a reason. This thing's over 3 hours long, I'm sure. And each topic went very long. In fact, the iPhone topic was even longer. This topic would keep going on if Jesus was here. But we are excited to have all of these episodes come out on the podcast. And of course, all these clips will be on YouTube. Yay. That's a lot of editing. Jesus, thanks for coming on, of course. And Jose, thanks for coming on. I know it's not easy for you to get some time to do a podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty busy.
Yeah, I bet it is. And got a lot of people there, don't you?
Yeah, plus, I actually did summer school this semester, so.
Yeah. I did the first semester. I did the first session, and I looked at the second session and went, oh, too difficult. That's a fall class. There's no way I'm doing that. No. So, alrighty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time.